Instructions for accessing subtitles in a language other than English are included on our board meetings webpage as well as in the description below. Instrucciones para acceder a los subtítulos en un idioma que no sea el inglés se incluyen en nuestra página web de reuniones de la Junta, así como en la descripción a continuación.
Good evening and welcome to the Ross Valley School District Board of Trustees regular meeting. Today is December 18th, 2024, and I am calling our meeting to order at 6:02. We have the following trustees present in person here at the Ross Valley School District office: myself, Rachel Litwack, Daniel Cassidy, and Shelley Hamilton. Trustees Ryan O'Neill and Trustee Chris Landles-Cobb are not in attendance tonight. We also have cabinet members present, Superintendent Graff, Eric Sable, and Chris Carson. The meeting's being live streamed via YouTube, and the link's on our website and on the agenda. There will be a 60-second delay between the meeting and the YouTube live stream. An audio recording of the meeting will be made available to the public on our district website within 72 hours following the meeting. And with that, I will go over to our agenda. The first item we have is closed session. I'm going to identify the items in closed session. Our topics are conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, subdivision D2 or 3, special education program dispute, 3 cases, student SSID 336-730-2355, number 521-737-7477, and number 645-966-2261. The other item under this agenda for closed session is liability claims, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, section D23, one case, claim number 25001. And with that, there is no public here for public comment. So at 6:04, I will recess us to closed session.
Aye.
All right, thank you. And we are reconvening at 7:01 for closed session. Our report out from closed session is there was approval of the special education program dispute, all three cases, SSID number 336-730-2355, number 521-737-7477, and case number 645-966-2261. The other item, the liability claim, was denied, and that was significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, D23, one case, claim 25001. And with that, I'm moving on to our procedural items, the first of which is the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'd like to stand with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And this item is to adopt the agenda and time allocations, and we would like to actually revise the order of the items. So we would like to move item number 2 to the item number 5 spot and just flip-flop number 5 and 2, if that's all right with everybody?
Sure.
All right. So if that is okay, then I will entertain a motion to adopt our agenda as modified there. Oh, and just for the record, Chris Landels-Cobb, our trustee, has just entered the room at 7:02. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
We were just discussing adopting the agenda and moving item number 2 to item number 5 spot and just flip-flopping them on the agenda. So I will entertain a motion.
With that shift, I would make a motion with the amendment to adopt the agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Sure, I'll second it.
Shelley? Aye. Daniel?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Rachel? Aye. All right, so we have adopted our agenda, and the next item is communication, which is public comment regarding items not on the open session agenda. If anybody has any open comments, open public comments? Not on the agenda? All right. Seeing none, I will move on. The next item is correspondence and communication to the board. We had one item listed there. The next item is presentation and or action items. The first one there is the Board of Trustees terms of office, oath of office, swearing in ceremony, recognition and reception of re-elected trustees. So with that, we have a guest here today.
Hi, everybody. Ready to get started?
Yes,
I was mentioning as I came in, I'm not sure I know everybody, but I'm John Carroll, Marin County Superintendent of Schools, and I get the honor of circulating throughout the county last week and this week, administering the oath of office to, I don't think I hit every single school district, but really close. And it's really nice to check in with people. And I was mentioning this is the least awkward of my swearing in ceremonies because I had endorsed all 3 candidates that are back on the board. And that wasn't the case everywhere. So there were some places where I had to swear at people and they were nice and polite, but maybe a little bit different than here. I also feel a special kinship with the Ross Valley School District, having worked here at one time and having a couple of colleagues who I've worked with in varying roles over the years. So my pleasure to be here tonight, and I will, if I could get the 3 candidates, not candidates anymore, the 3 trustees who've been reelected to stand and raise your right hand. And the way this will work is I'll say I, and then there's a blank, and I'll pause, and you say your name, and then just repeat after me. And I think I have it down now, where I do it in a cadence that you can keep up with. And that took some doing. Because there are some people that I get, like too many words. Like we got this. So, but you do have to listen carefully. Okay. I.
Aye.
Shelley Hamilton.
Rachel
Daniel
Lerac.
Cassidy.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear
Or affirm. That I will support and defend the Constitution.
That I will support and defend the Constitution
Of the United States.
Of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California
Against all enemies.
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations. I just want to take a moment to express my gratitude, as I do for trustees everywhere, stepping into a job, and you're all veterans at this point, so you know what it's like, and yet you come back. I think one of the most thankless elected jobs you can have. It's unpaid, it's a lot of work. When things go smoothly, no one knows who you are. When things go bad, everyone points their fingers at you. So it's not one of these places where you can find a lot of glory. Some people use it as a stepping stone to higher political office. I don't think that's the case, as far as I can tell. It also doesn't work very well for those people who do. Once in a while it does. There are a few people who use it as a stepping stone, but I think you are all here, and I have some personal experience in observing your work over the last several months. And I'm convinced that you're here for all the right reasons, that you're here to serve kids, to make sure that students learn and grow emotionally every day. So my gratitude, and I think I express gratitude from your community as well, and on behalf of the County of Marin for the work that you do. So thanks very much.
I just want to reaffirm what John said here. Part of the reason I applied for this job was the strength and stability of this board. So having that strength and stability continue on is something I know I'm really excited about, our community's excited about, and our staff is really excited about. So I'm personally looking forward to the work that we have ahead of ourselves, and I know that this board will do the right thing by kids. Congratulations, you three.
Thank you.
Thanks, good luck. You'll need it.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Way to leave the room. Thank you.
All right. So,
We can have a short reception here. We do want to move on with the agenda. We've got a pretty packed one, but we do have refreshments and cookies. We do have some family members here, so feel free to stand up. have some refreshments, and we'll get started maybe in about 10 minutes. Does that sound good? Great.
right, welcome back. Thank you for that small reception. Our next item on our agenda is the annual Board of Trustees organizational rate. This is number 2. We switched around, right?
Yep.
Sorry, my bad. Our next item is the board discussion for the purpose of giving direction to the superintendent regarding parcel tax renewal. So that was item 2, or 2. There was 5, and it's now 2. Okay. So this is Tyler.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
Great.
You good?
Well, I'm excited to bring this presentation to you tonight. Some of the slides that I'm about to show, many of you have already seen, so I'll move through some of them pretty quickly. But essentially, we are asking the board for some direction around details around continuing a parcel tax that we currently have and adjusting some of the terms and the amount. This is a parcel tax that the community of Ross Valley has supported for over 30 years. So we expect that that support will continue. So why are we considering increasing the parcel tax? And I think this really starts with what I've heard loud and clear from the community is the quality of our teachers, classified staff, and administrators is exceptional here. We want to continue to retain and attract new teachers, diverse teachers and staff to support our students. And one of the problems is we have the lowest per pupil revenue in the county, which makes it very difficult to compete with surrounding districts or even similar districts with similar funding structures that we do. So in order to solve that problem, we've got 2 options. We can go through budget cuts. We've had the Budget Advisory Committee this year bring us a list of cuts, which we'll bring to the next board meeting for you to consider. Or we can go out and try to increase revenue through adjusting the current parcel tax that we have moving forward. You've seen this one before. It's just an articulation of districts on the left side are state funded, and the more low income English language learner, homeless and foster youth students drive more funding. So a district like Santa Fe gets $12 million above the state minimum. And then other school districts that have larger property tax revenues can generate, $6, $8, $10, $20 million above the state minimum. We're right down there with Miller Creek, Kent Field, and Larkspur Corte Madera, kind of right at the bottom. And we, along with Miller Creek, kind of flip-flop between state funded and community funded. This is a really good articulation of exactly how that looks in practice. There we are at the top of this, but really the lowest funded in the county. Miller Creek has $600 per student more than we do, and then you can see Novato, Kentfield, Larkspur, Corte Madera over $1,000 more than we have. Having $1,000 more per student would really help solve a lot of our budget problems. So we have to augment this revenue through a parcel tax. And when you compare our parcel tax to parcel taxes of our comparison districts, at least the ones we're considering comparison districts this year, we're on the low end. So not only are our revenues low, but our parcel tax is relatively low in comparison. This year we're at just under $700, $699. Next year we'll bump up to $720. And when you compare that to Larkspur, Corte Madera, and Kentfield, we're $300 to $1,100 behind them. You'll also notice that our inflation rate is lower. We're at 3%. Larkspur, Corte Madera is at 5%, and you can see Miller Creek at 5% as well. We also have the shortest term, 8 years, where you see other districts at 10 and 12 years. So when we're talking about, reorganizing the current parcel tax, these are some things for us to consider. The conversations I've had with folks, we're not recommending getting as high as Kentfield. We think that's a pretty high parcel tax. We're looking for something closer in that Larkspur, Corte Madera range, and I think that would get us to a place where we could offer competitive salaries for all of our staff. You've seen this before. You'll see this again with Chris's presentation later tonight. The yellow line there, you can see the revenues starting in 21-22 was at 27 million, went to 30 million, then went down a little bit, still basically at 30 million. This year, 24-25, went down under 30 million, and it's going to kind of stay in that range next year and then bump up to 31 million. So you can see our revenues really are pretty darn flat over the last handful of years. And we all know that the prices of everything is going up. We're giving raises to our teachers, so it's becoming more and more challenging to meet the needs of the district with relatively flat revenues. The scary thing for me is really the red line there. You'll see in the last 4 years from 23-24 all the way through 26-27, we're going to be deficit spending. The real numbers are the first three. You see we put $2 million into reserves in 21-22. That's a real number. We put $2 million into the reserves in 22-23. Last year, we spent down the reserves by over $500,000. And then the last three numbers are projections. Right now, we're projected to deficit spend by $2.6 million. It probably won't be that, but it will be in the high 1 millions, very close to $2 million when we come back to you in October. And then you've got a $3 million deficit and a $1.2 million deficit in that 26-27 year. So we need to fix the structural deficit, and we need to do a better job paying our staff. You can see the projection for our revenues is going down here. Reserves, thanks. I appreciate that. The first three numbers are real numbers, 26.6, 25.7, and 23.1. And then the following three numbers are projections at 16.4%, 8.7, and 5.7. This, again, the state requirement is a 3% reserve. The board's ask is a 10% reserve, and an elementary district average across the state is 25%. You've seen this before. This is a comparison of a couple different places in the salary schedule with these comparison districts. What you see in green is us paying better than the comparison district, and what you see in red is them paying more. So when I came to you earlier in the year, I felt confident that we were kind of in the ballpark. We're right there. We've got some higher, some lower. We're competitive. There have been settlements across the districts. Everything but Miller Creek has had a settlement. So we've had a settlement. Kentfield, Larkspur, Corte-Madera have a settlement. You can see there's more red this year than there was last year. So we're getting less competitive, fewer green boxes. And those green boxes we have are just, a percentage or two above the comparison districts. And then when we start looking out to next year, obviously we haven't settled for next year. Those numbers may increase if we get a parcel tax. They will likely not increase if we don't get a parcel tax. So those numbers may stay stagnant if we don't get a parcel tax. A lot of red here. And you look at the percentages that we've put there, these are much higher percentages. So when you compare the first starting cell, Kentfield, you'd get paid almost 13% more than you get paid here, almost 4% at Larkspur, Corte-Madera, and without a settlement, 3.7% higher at Miller Creek. So this is an increasingly urgent issue for us to make adjustments here and increase the revenue so we can pay our teachers an appropriate salary. I extended this as well. This used to be a 3-year total. I've added this year's in there as well. So you can see Miller Creek has a TBD. If they settle for more than a 1/3%, they'll bump in front of us and we'll fall back here. So I came to you earlier this year saying we've been aggressive, we're in the ballpark, and now we're kind of sliding behind as we move forward. We gave 1.35% this year. We felt like that's what we could afford. It increased our deficit spending, just giving that small percentage. So in order to continue to give raises, we're going to need to have an increase in the parcel tax. So the parcel tax would be used to pay teacher salaries. That's what we'd use it for. Because we could pay more for more teacher salaries, it would also alleviate some of the strain on our unrestricted budget, which would allow us to have salary increases for our counselors, our support staff, our custodial staff, everyone else that works across the district. It could help us increase some program improvements. I'm thinking specifically for Tier 2 intervention for our students or special ed services. And it could give us a little bit more breathing room for facilities maintenance. However, the parcel tax will not be used for administrative salaries, facilities improvements, or pension obligations explicitly. So it's kind of an implicit dance here. So what happens if the ballot measure doesn't pass? We'll have to implement the list of budget cuts up to $500,000 to the Budget Advisory Committee forwarded to us, and that means a guest support teacher. And this is kind of like a roving substitute that helps with alleviating, unfilled subs or supporting with, a teacher needing to leave their classroom to attend an IEP meeting. They're pretty important. Our principals really enjoy that support. A few tech platforms, our teacher leadership positions at White Hill, and reducing class sections and increasing class size at White Hill. Salary increases will also stagnate. With a projected $3 million deficit next year, it's very unlikely we'll be able to give a single percent next year. Very, very difficult next year. And then potentially we'll need to consider deeper cuts in the out years, and this would be the 7-period day where our kids get 2 electives, counseling services, certificated PE teachers at the elementary school level. Kids would still get PE, but teachers would need to do the teaching. We wouldn't have certificated PE to allow teachers to have prep time, and that would need to be negotiated with our union partners. And then 5th grade instrumental music. So you can see it's pretty significant if we did not get the measure passed. And here's what happens if it does pass. We can negotiate meaningful salary increases with our union partners, potentially do a multi-year settlement. We haven't done one of those in a while, and it would be a nice thing to have us focus on other things than salary increases. It helps us attract and retain high-quality, diverse staff members, and would make our salary schedule more competitive with our comparative districts. Would also be able to maintain our excellent student programs. We have fantastic programs here. Our elective programs are amazing. Our band, our music, our art programs are fantastic. We have good tier 2 interventions for our students. I'd love to see those increase. With a parcel tax, we'll still have a little bit of movement in the budget to allow us to do that. We can also examine our systems of student support and maybe keep some students from getting IEPs because we give them support before they need an IEP. And we'll be able to minimize or eliminate the structural deficit. So some questions for the board to consider tonight. Should the tax be a per parcel tax, which is what the current structure is, or should we go to a per square foot parcel tax, which would mean a smaller home would pay less tax and a larger home would pay a larger tax? What should the annual inflation rate be? Right now we're at 3%. What should the term of the parcel tax be? It ends in 2028, but we could re-up now and do an 8, a 10, or a 12-year term. Should we consider a senior exemption? Senior exemptions are not allowed in a bond, which is for facilities, but they are allowed in a parcel tax, which usually is used for programs and salaries. Right now, we're recommending about a $3 million increase to the overall parcel tax. If you'd like to see an adjustment for that, please let us know. And should we hire a consultant to support us with that informational campaign? So those are some of the questions to consider. Happy to take direction from the board or answer any questions you might have.
Tyler, you and I had a moment to talk about this because I didn't think I was going to make this meeting today. And, one of the things that concerns me about a per parcel or per square foot is the confusion that it can cause. And I think that anytime you confuse taxpayers to vote on something, it dismantles our ability to pass it. So I am in favor of not having a per square foot, but just per parcel. And I know that in some cases you can say, well, what about the bigger properties? We're losing out, but you also have a population of individuals here that can opt out of that parcel tax. So that I think sort of fills the glass and empties it at the same time. And I think that the one thing that I want to make sure we do is that we pass this, right? That's my biggest concern. In terms of the annual inflation rate, we'd also talked about that as well. Mm-hmm. In 2022, believe it or not, the inflation rate was 9.6%. It's crazy, okay? The Federal Reserve is projecting an annual inflation rate of 2.1% in 2026. And they bringing in Trump's proposed tariffs will be at 2.3. I think if we have a shorter tail of an 8-year parcel tax, we can safely stay at 3% unless there's an anomaly like the 9.6. But I think that given the administration's goals to do the things they want to do for tech and corporations, they are incentivized to keep that inflation rate low, as well as the individual who's been hired to head Treasury, who is a T-bill expert. So I believe that we will at least buy ourselves 4 years so we don't have to up that 5%. And I think that's another scary turnoff as well for voters. So I think staying at that 3%. And I have some other things in there, but I wanted to just throw those two strong comments out for us to think about. Just making sure that we provide a red carpet for our taxpayers to understand, I think, what could happen if we don't pass it and what will happen if we don't. And the ease of understanding that it's just very clear and very clean for taxpayers. That's my 2 cents.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I like the eight year. I mean, I'm not a financial expert, but it doesn't seem like you're as locked in, right? Things may change and you can always renew sooner, kind of like what we're proposing now. So I kind of like that, and I would follow Chris's lead on the inflation numbers, right? If that feels right to our community, which we know it's very cost sensitive, again, it lowers that barrier of rejection.
So I just want to say on the 8-year renewal, it's traditional, like it maybe at 2 to 3 years out, you always are starting to prepare to renew it ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, like in 2020 when ours expired, we started in 2018 to renew it. So it's like, so 8 years is not a very long runtime for another one. 10 years, I mean, and it's a big lift from the community, because the community has to do it. It can't be district funds.
Right.
So it's like, I can see the appeal of having maybe 10 years, because it's a constant, like, you have to find the people, you have to get experience, and it's like, then you're waiting to see if things are gonna be renewed or not, and then you need to have enough lead time if it fails to do it again to get a smaller amount like they did at TAM for their bond. So I think having the extra 2 years for me, somebody who's worked on parcel taxes and bonds, having the extra time, I appreciate it. I do see, like, I'm gonna have to pay it on my tax bill as well. So I mean, for that, the 3%, I could see why it'd be more appealing as well. But I don't know that we want to stick with 8 if we're looking at the other 3 comparable districts, they all have 10 or 12.
But if you go 10 years, would you stay at an inflationary rate of 3, or would you up it to 5?
I guess what I'm hearing is the longer you go out, the more variability and unpredictability you have.
It's only 2 years.
It's only 2 years.
But you're looking at different administrations on a federal level that can come in and dismantle any type of inflationary precautions that are in place, right? And it can go south within 6 months.
But you'll have that in 4 years.
Maybe.
You could also consider, I know the examples here were 3 and 5%, but if you all wanted to move to 3.5% or 4%, like there's no hard number 3 or 5.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's very
Oh,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because what does that do? I mean, what I'm thinking, I mean, we're already far behind in allowing our teachers to live here and be able to afford it, whether, this happens or not. What is that massaging of those numbers at 0.5% do? That would be interesting to see. Right?
I was gonna say, I think some of this for me, I'm doing scenario churning in my head of 3% over 10 years on a square foot. I mean, you've got a bunch of variables here, so you kind of have to. I'm thinking of scenarios, and then what you're saying is then that's the revenue side of the scenario. But then I'm also thinking of the expense side of the scenario, which is what actual inflationary rates are, plus what actual potential, escalation in salaries are to keep up with the rest of the districts who are going to be continuing to do. Like, I don't want to be back in this seat again in 6 years because we can't keep up with that and we underpin what we need, which I think is what I'm hearing you saying, which I agree with. I don't want to undershoot it such that we're right back here in 5 years.
Right.
And I think the last
something like
time
that.
the district renewed a parcel tax, we kept everything status quo. So we didn't up the amount, we didn't up the
We dropped
inflation.
the inflator from 4 to 3 in 2018.
Mhm.
So we went
Yeah,
down.
so we would
And
almost
what was
be,
that based on, that decision to go from 4 to 3 then?
They didn't want it to fail.
Right.
and I think that's something for the board to consider is which of the toggles do you want to move up or down in order to get the yes? Because the ultimate thing is we want the yes, so we're not enacting the cuts that we talked about.
And we have to be careful. Are we toggling it because it looks good, or are we toggling it because it's going to have an effective impact on what we can offer our teachers? Because 3%, 3.5%, go 4,
That's what those scenario things you have to
Exactly.
do are, because again, you don't want to toggle
The
it down
difference
so
between-
low that you're not actually going to be able to achieve the goals that
keep
you
up with the
want
cost of
to.
living in Orange County.
The difference between 3 and 4% would be about $74,000. The cost of 1% to the whole district is $200,000. So it's less than 1% to teachers
Right.
if we did it from 3 to 4%. So it's not like a huge impact.
But each year you get that
That's right.
guaranteed.
That's
So, but if you push it to 4, you get that fear from taxpayers.
And that's the thing is if you dial all the dials down, in one individual dial might be not significant, but if you, I have no idea what the fiscal impact of per parcel or per square foot is. I'm sure there's some sort of mathematical where you take the per square footage in the district and figure that out on a per part. But if you say we're going to choose the one that's going to get us less revenue, and then we're going to choose the inflationary rate, that's the lowest, and we're going to choose the timeline, that's like if you dial all those dials down, that might have a detrimental impact. So I think it's a matter of figuring out which dials have the most voting impact, and then how is the combination of
The per square foot versus the per parcel shouldn't have any impact on the revenues. Because we can if we say we want a $3 million target, we can just increase the cents per square foot or increase the
Parcel
dollar
tax.
per parcel
Yeah.
to get to the $3 million money,
Right.
the number. But you may have a taxpayer who says, I'm voting yes on this because it's equitable. I have a smaller place, I'm paying less. But you might have someone say, I'm paying way more than I used to pay because my house is large.
to which
So-
I would then want to know what's your stock and inventory of housing units in the voting public to be able to understand from a voter perspective of 80% of our housing units are gonna be smaller, but then you have to
So the
Charge
average
Yeah.
home size in our two towns, if we did 16.5 cents more than what we currently have, which would be 42.3% per square foot, the average home gets you at 1146, which is right around where Kentfield, or right where Larkspur Quarter
That's a
is.
$450 increase year over year.
That's right.
And is that kind of the target we're looking for?
Somewhere in that zone. I think if we could get somewhere between, 1,000 and 1150, I think that would get us to the.
Because isn't that one of the arguments we're gonna have to make is, in addition to renewing it, you guys are gonna need to pay 50% more.
Mhm.
So how is that perceived?
good reason.
No, 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a big number. I live around a lot of old neighbors that have been there a long time. I'm already having a conversation with that now.
That when I ran the numbers at 42.3 cents per square foot, a 1,700 square foot home would essentially pay the projected $700, $720 that we would if we didn't do anything. So if you had a 1,700 square foot home or smaller, you'd pay the same amount or less.
So no change.
Essentially no change. It may actually have a tax reduction if you have a little 1,100 square foot bungalow.
Interesting.
And then on the larger
Higher
size, it could go up to $2,500, and we could set a cap to say no one's paying more than $2,000 or $3,000, whatever the cap is.
How do you convey that to the public to vote on it without
That's
them?
the challenge.
This is where it gets more
That's a challenge.
confusing.
Is that why people do the parcel just because it's
I'm
easier?
backing into the lazy person's, but I just seen the confusion.
The low information voting.
My own marriage was voted against because they reworded it wrong, right? So it's like really getting it simplified to where it doesn't get, but that's just me. I mean, I just want to get this thing passed.
Yeah.
But to Shelley's point, if we have a higher percentage of people with sub 1,700 square foot houses that are voting, that's not a bad thing, right? If they may be more in favor of that. Again, if it gets us to the number, I don't know. I'm not a politic, there's a lot of levers here.
That's what I was
So
thinking.
we're just starting this we're not saying this is what we're doing, right?
Tonight is a conversation to give Chris and I some direction on what we can bring back to you on January 29th. On January 29th, what I'm hearing from the board at this moment in time is maybe bringing a couple different proposals, and you can vote on, A, B, or C, whichever one you all think might get the most yes votes. And we will work with our consultants, if the board approves the consultant, to kind of dial in exactly what language might work best for a voter
And
population.
do we have, and if there are some examples, because my understanding from a presentation we had last year is that actually more parcel tax campaigns are going towards a square footage than, there is a
one in the
shift
county.
afoot in general, and some advocacy support for that
For
that we
that.
might be able to leverage, and that we also might have,
My understanding is not that it would be so much support that we'd be getting, rather not receiving opposition if we went with the per square foot from tax groups.
which is significant information to
Yes.
consider.
And with that in mind, I'd say number 4, we should definitely have a senior exemption. We have one now,
Yes.
and I think that we have a large population of seniors, and if we need their votes, we need to make sure that they can opt out.
And
does that- So how does that change then the numbers with a large percentage over 65? Then do we have to raise our ask more, knowing that they may opt out?
You just asked them.
We currently have that now.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so it's kind of
not-
baked into this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have about 30% of our population opt out right now.
I think you may raise a good point, though. Are you saying that we should understand the demographics of people with larger plots? Are they younger? Do they have kids in the district?
Yeah, I mean, if
Is there a way to do that within the time frame that you're talking about?
You should understand the demographics of the voter. I mean, I don't know how much we've done in the prior. I know we did the survey thing, but I think having an understanding of the demographics of the voting jurisdiction that we're in, both in terms of parcels, age, likely voters, what's the impact on the variety of people who are likely to be voting on this, should be partially what informs
Yeah.
how it gets talked about, and who we go and talk to and how we talk to them, and understand, like I said, understanding how many parcels in our jurisdiction are this size or that size, and are those the likely voters or the not likely voters, are those the seniors or not the seniors, I think would be really helpful to understand how to craft this to meet our financial needs, while at the same time making sure it gets passed.
Yeah.
So,
One thing Rachel and I have found in talking to some surrounding districts, and I believe this is true here as well, that somewhere between 70 to 80% of the homeowners are not, they're not sending kids to our schools. They're seniors, they're young couples, their kids are off to college, and they're not deeply connected to our schools. They're kind of tangentially connected. And 30%, based on the exemption rate, about 30% of those people are seniors that are opting out anyway. So there's a large proportion of the people that vote that aren't, sending their kids to our teachers' classrooms. That's something to consider.
So,
I mean, we can pull demographic data for our district and like the ages, groups, and whatever, and then cross-reference probably with some information we have about the parcel sizes. Because I know Chris was doing some investigating in the parcels, the number of parcels we have or something.
We know the number of parcels we have.
We don't know the breakdown.
Yeah, we don't know the breakdown of them.
That'd be hard.
That might be a little more difficult because getting the square footages was pretty difficult to begin with. The parcel sizes.
Yeah.
Which again, I mean, it speaks to then the conversation around the messaging, which I'm all in favor of in general, which is public education is a benefit to us all. That this is not a transactional fee for service kind of deal. Pay your taxes, get your service. This is a public benefit for everyone who lives here. And there are lots of different reasons why there's if you want to just go economically, there's home value prices, but even bigger than that, this is our public responsibility for the last generation, for the next generation, and for many more generations to come. And this is what we do as a civil society who cares about children. So
that would come into number 6 about a consultant support us with an informational campaign. They have that kind of messaging.
Right. But I think it also tees into the who are the people that are voting. If they're not, my kids are going to school next year and I want great teachers for my kids. We want great teachers
For our children in general.
For our children in general and for years to come, even after your kids have graduated. And
and that's one of the really great things about our community is that, I think we had like a 77 or 74% passage rate of Measure E in 2018 for our current parcel tax. And it's the same demographics as it is now. So the people who do support our schools and our
But
teachers.
a couple months ago when we had the consultant, hey, what would you do? It was a whatever, I'm gonna make this up. Only 65% said they were in, or whatever, it was 54%, we had to get to maybe 65. And we're like, oh, 54, that's not bad. But they said that's like a massive gulf. So how do we change that outcome? Is that through this consultant, more everybody's on board, everybody's going in the same direction?
yeah.
I think a huge part of the problem the last time when we did the polling was, one, we had no information out there in the public, none. Tyler has come on board and he's gone around and done his budget roadshow tour, and he's talked to several stakeholder groups, but we didn't have that before, and we just kind of like, hey, let's just bring this on our community at a time when there were already bonds going up for multiple municipalities around our area. So there was talk about a tax tsunami and things like that, and so I think people were already kind of ready to say no to anything at that point. And I think the fact that there was already the trepidation about the other things that were possibly coming up as taxes, coupled with the fact that we had no informational campaign. And one of the terms that was listed on the survey was that it was until it was repealed by voters, which basically was spun as a forever tax. And people do not want that. They need a term on it. So I think we absolutely have to have a term. Yeah. Because I think that was what tanked it. Everyone I've talked to when I've been out and about has said that was why they said no, including my husband. So I think that there are things in that aren't really reflective of the score. I think we'll be able to get if we have the information, if we're out there, and if we have the people in our community who are willing to help us.
And then it's the community going out to all of your neighbors who don't have kids at Archie, have kids wherever, private schools, don't have kids in. It's getting that, and that's the community that it takes all of us. That's the
And if you have great teachers with great quality schools, your property values are going to be outstanding.
Yeah, but we all agree with that. We need the people that don't agree with that. Like,
who doesn't want their property value to go up?
I can't afford $300 more a month.
Who doesn't
A year
want
or
a
a year.
high quality community?
I know.
Right? Who doesn't want, dumb kids?
We-
with their parents?
practicing your door knockings.
But we would need that message, because I remember going door to door for, I think, something at Memorial Park, Measure E or something years ago. The first person I knocked on, he goes, I get it. You guys all bought $1 million houses. You got high taxes. I've been here 40 years. I can't afford it anymore. No.
Senior exemption.
I know, but I was like, that's the first guy I knock on? Like, what do we do? Okay, let's go back to the dugout and get beer.
Go to the next door.
I think,
You keep
the one
walking.
thing, just back to your original question of like, hey, it was 55% when we polled last. We need to get to 65%. The consultants say that's a chasm. Every teacher I've talked to, and I spoke to a handful of counselors today about this, and they asked me, what can we do?
Yeah.
Right, that's
And I said, we can come on our non-paid time on the weekend and knock doors, and they're all willing to do it. I talked with our union partners. They're willing to do it. I'm willing to do it. I know you all are willing to do it in our non-paid time. So I have a lot of confidence in this community that we're going to get out there and we're going to get to the town council meetings. We're going to go to the PTA meetings. We're going to knock doors, and everyone's going to have all the information that they'll need to make the informed decision that they need to make.
And to that point, Chris, I definitely hear what you were saying about making choices on these factors so that it passes, and the appropriate language so that it passes. And you were talking about like low information voters or voters who maybe who aren't going to spend time really understanding this. And my feeling from what Tyler just said is that I think there is going to be so much outreach that will kind of bring up the informedness, which might allow us to maybe make some assumptions that we might not make if we were assuming a lot more uninformed blanket whatevers. So that's for me when I'm weighing like, am I willing to maybe push it a little bit harder on the percentage rate, or maybe think about the per square foot instead of like maybe not making it just super, super, super easy and dumb it down all the way, because I think we're going to have a campaign that will bring up the information awareness.
on our current tax.
I think we're going to have to.
Yeah, we have.
I think
On
we're
our
gonna
current
have
tax bill, do we know if it's per parcel or per square foot?
Parcel.
to.
No, our school district, but what about library, the mosquitoes, everything else that we're paying for? Does that matter? Does like if you get, like, do people know?
I'm just trying to be an expert on the schools, so I don't know what
You don't know about mosquito
we can look into it.
tax?
I think there's our local one that tried like the emergency services or something.
I don't know, and I guess this is what our consultant would tell us. Hey, this is we're the smartest people in the room. This is what we recommend you do. So great, let's do that.
So I want to be cognizant of time tonight, and I have a feeling we could talk about this in depth for another hour. I'm hearing loud and clear from the board that a senior exemption is a yes, and we should definitely design around that.
Yes.
Is there any direction for the board around the term or inflation rate that you'd like us to consider?
More than 8, less than 14. That's
For
my
years?
feeling. In years.
Years.
And maybe you do 10 if that's
I would
similar
say
to.
I would say 10 at the very most, because we might have another pandemic, and that like threw the finances all over the place.
And 8's too short.
8's too short.
And 8's too short, I think.
If this helps, I read the Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers guidelines on parcel taxes this morning, and they recommend between 8 and 10 years.
Okay.
10.
All right.
And inflation, Mr.
Yeah,
Treasury.
I only know what I know today and the nerds that crunch the numbers. But, I think that if we chose 3, I wouldn't feel like we're putting ourselves in peril. But 10 years out, and we talked about this, I might creep it up a little bit,
Like 3.5.
like a half.
And then is that negotiation without like, all right, if we go down to 3, but then we're gonna do 8? No, once we, there's no like this is what we're petitioning for.
My hope is that when we come to you on January 29th, we have a pretty concrete plan, and then the next day, I start sending out information, I publish a video, we start knocking doors, and we get, because these are all the questions that the folks in the room are asking, what are the details, and once we're on that, we're gonna have some talking points, and then we've got a few months runway to make.
And I think Shelley raised this, but if we do this, are we still in the tailwind of Kentfield and Corte Madera?
Which was my question on number 5, which was where you came up with the 3 million. What were there assumptions baked into it based on the context and landscape that we're in, and that's how you got there? And if that's fine, then I would say, okay, great.
Yep. So I think that if you look at the 25-26 here,
Yeah,
we could turn most of this green. We're not going to turn all of it green in 1 year, but if we do a 2-year deal, we can get close to turning most of this green and be very competitive with these similar districts.
for
how long?
how long?
Yeah, so say if it, with 3.5, keep us competitive.
It's really hard to tell because as you see districts make decisions on teacher pay, you've seen some districts in the area say, we're actually going to reduce student programs to pay our teachers. And I think our community is at this inflection point where we're really proud of the programs we offer our students, and we want to maintain those programs, yet we also want to pay our teachers. So that's, I think, the challenge we're in.
Can we get any intel on their budgets and when do their parcel taxes end? Have they been aggressive for the past 4 years to the point where they're going to have to taper off? I mean, there's some kind of, not quite a crystal ball, but maybe some informed projecting of like, hey, they went this and they're going to flatten out, or something that
It's
would,
tough to tell.
no,
I just think
it's a crystal ball.
you start cutting things, you start cutting the morale too at the schools. And that, I mean,
But you're saying some of these have already started doing cuts to be able to.
Yeah, Larkspur Corte Madera no longer offers a 7-period day at the middle school,
yeah.
and Kentfield is cutting it as we speak.
Ah, okay, so that's helpful information.
From what
which
I understand,
to me,
yeah.
kind of says, okay, they're not. They're gonna maybe flatten out or something.
What does the teacher leadership say to you? Like what have they communicated about what they think we should do as well? Other than, I know there's a lot of help and stuff, but have you spoken to the leadership to say?
I think having a 2-year deal is something that at least RVTA is very interested in. My guess is CSEA would be interested in that as well.
Okay.
I mean, I know that RVTA would love for us to light this thing up completely bright green. And we have to make sure we're financially solvent, we're not structurally deficit spending. So it's and that's where.
And we have to make sure it passes.
It's tough for me to say right here, well, I want to turn everything green, which means I have to give a 15% 1-year raise. But I need to go to the bargaining table with the union to talk about that. So I could be aggressive and turn it all green next year, but that's going to have all kinds of cascading impacts down the road.
But I think I'm asking more along the lines of, the goal is we want this to pass.
Yes.
And has there been a push to take risk in getting it to pass? That's what I'm just sort of wondering though.
Like the risk analysis and tolerance for risk and it
Yeah.
not getting passed in order
Like,
to have higher
I haven't
levels
had
of-
that conversation with you.
I don't like participation trophies. I like to win. And so, nice try.
Yeah.
Look what we did.
Yeah.
We tried. Then I can't play with that.
I think
So-
everyone I'm talking to is going for the W.
Okay.
It
Okay.
needs to be
So then we
W
have to-
because when you go back to this and you're projecting a $3 million deficit in 25-26, which means there's no way we can offer a raise.
Right.
Well, union leadership is crystal clear about not wanting that option.
That's right. Okay.
So the
Okay.
only other option is a W.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think I think going into this, I think we should really balance the optics for voters. I think the exemption is a smart idea for seniors. I don't know. I mean, I'm willing to hear the arguments around a parcel per foot and the flat, maybe based on some underlying data,
right.
which was what I think, Daniel and Shelley are interested in. And then I think when we come back, we can take a look at all of that stuff and determine from there.
Yeah.
And I think we're all on board for a 10 based on the churn rate on this.
Good summary. Good summary.
Do you think it would be helpful to have like a special meeting so we could tweak this, because there's a really short runway to put a ballot measure on?
Time frame.
Yeah.
We gotta
like
make
it
a
has-
decision.
We have to make a
January.
decision. Our next board meeting is January
January
29th,
Yeah.
and so we have to make a decision then.
Is there a possibility to have a special meeting with a consultant if we decide to go that route as well, so that we can ensure that
And
we've got
and
everything
community?
plugged in?
The special meetings that we had in the fall were
I think I would like to go to the community with an answer.
okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
So once we decide on these things and that we have the information, I'm happy to host a town hall where it's an informational campaign and I share exactly
Okay.
what the cost is and, all the details.
Okay.
Could you say something more about
So-
the consultant then? Or go ahead.
Yeah, we'll
summarize
talk
if you
about the
want to.
consultant.
It's
It's
another
another
item.
agenda item.
Oh, okay.
Just for clarity, I'm hearing direction from the board at a 3.5% inflation rate initially. Senior exemption, absolutely. A 10-year term and more conversation on the per parcel versus per square foot. Is that accurate?
I think so, yeah.
Great.
Sounds good.
All right. That's all I need.
Rachel, you're the parcel tax expert here.
I mean, the only thing I can say on the per parcel versus per square foot is we will get less pushback on the per square foot. But I think it might be harder to pass because of the understanding. We have to get out and explain that to everybody, what that means and how it will affect them.
Right.
Because it is harder to, like, okay, then I have to look, and actually for me, it would cost me less. But it's like you have to go and do the calculation, and trying to tell people that is really a tricky thing. So it's like, would people vote no because it's too complicated? So that is something that I think we do need to discuss more.
Yeah.
Just because that,
Yeah.
I'd like people to have a chance to weigh in on that.
Yeah,
I think the other thing is would it be possible for us to do a survey and send it to people? Like, here are the 3 various options and here's how it would affect you, so they can vote on it that way. I mean, it might give us more feedback from the community, like we did when we were asking what people wanted us to do with the money from the sale of Deer Park.
Yeah, but
to
that was
get
just going to our district. How do you,
I put that all over social media, so
yeah.
we had people who weren't in our schools doing that. So, but I mean, it's just to give people a chance to
Right.
like provide feedback.
Right.
Because I would like to hear what other people have to say.
With this information, I could put a short survey together that we could gather some data that might help us make a decision.
Just to see if people understand the concept of per square foot or versus whatever. Just I feel like I don't have enough information to say one way or another. I know how I personally feel about it, but
Yeah,
I'm representing a bunch of people, so.
yeah. And I again, I've seen ballot measures confuse people and they just,
Yeah.
you don't have to deal with that. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with that, we have to go for public comment.
Sorry?
So public comment. I have cards here. If anybody else would like to add one, or at the end, if you haven't turned one in, you can just let me know. But I have Deanna Sotile. If you'd like to come up. You don't want to. Sorry, you're always on the top.
No, can I ask one fast question? We're not up there yet.
You have a green card, so you can come up.
Yeah. Yours is
I just want, what is the percentage it needs to pass? Is it
65.
66.6. Yeah.
I'm Deanna Subtitles, Hidden Valley 6th grade teacher, and I'm also one of the 3 co-presidents for our VTA. Chris.
Oh, thank you, Teresa. I just want to thank you all for this conversation and for everything all the collaboration you do. It feels like a really positive partnership. Looking forward to working with you. I want to just tell you all, please reach out to any of us and tell us how we can help as we're moving forward, because we really want to work together. And we just want to continue to build trust. We obviously represent all of our members, and there's still some trust that needs to be continued to be built up. So we want to continue working on that, and agree totally that the messaging and the language that goes out to the community is really important. And what else did I want to say? That's basically it. I would specifically, we want to make sure that, like one of the language things is that we're saying teachers a lot. We just want to make sure that that all educators are included when we use the term teacher, that we also mean the counselors and the speech therapists and the school psychologists. And I really appreciate the really specific, questions about the amounts here. When I was voting for the measure B, I know it's a different thing, but I actually read it in the ballot book, and there was a little formula you could do, because I was like, well, I want to know, like, how much is my tax actually going to be different? Like, what's the amount going to be? And I was able to do it really quick, and it was like, I forget, it was $200 or $300, and I was like, okay, no brainer, of course. But my husband was like, well, that's a lot of money. So I feel like people do really need to know the specifics. It would be helpful to know. But again, please reach out to let us know how we can help, and looking forward to working together. I know we have a lot of people that really want to work together, and an amazing community of parents that, in my 17 years, I've always felt are really with us and ready to support, and lots of really smart, caring people that really love our schools.
Thank you. Danielle Whitmer.
Oh, you're this way. I really hope I go last. So, I'm a parent of 2 Hidden Valley children. I have a house in San Anselmo. I grew up in San Anselmo. All my mom and dad's friends are in San Anselmo and Fairfax. They're the seniors you're talking about. That exemption's very smart because they all vote, but they're on fixed incomes and they made a lot less than people make now. And they bought their house. One of them bought their house for like $16,000 on Meadowcroft. So just to like put it in perspective, her neighbors are definitely bringing home more than she is. She's a librarian still. So that said, I think that's all smart, but I'm in support of the parcel tax. I think it's really important. I think everyone here knows that without our teachers, our schools are just lipstick on a pig. My son was in the same class that I took. I was in 6th grade in the same class that my son's kindergarten class was in. And it still has the water stained, poked hole ceiling tile that it had when Mr. Cook was there. So that said, our teachers are amazing. They are the ones who kiss our kids, give them hugs when they fall, dry their tears, tell us if they're having a hard time, see things that we don't see because we love them too much to notice it, and really teach our kids how to be good people. And they're ultimately are going to make them healthier adults and help with their mental health and all those other things that are really important. And I'd really like this whole community to be kind and sweet in 20 years and not, riddled with people that didn't get hugged enough as kids. So that said, I think the parcel tax is really important regardless of anything else. And our teachers deserve it. They're really amazing people and they work really hard and they do it because they love our kids. So they deserve it more than anyone. So thank you.
Sandra?
Hi, I'm Sandra Murtaugh. I've got 2 kids at Hidden Valley, and I am part of the parent support group here, letting you guys know that we're here and we're ready to support this. And I would just ask that, I want to make sure it's enough. Our teachers give everything to our children. I want them to live in our community. I've heard way too many hardship stories about the things that they need to pay for and the things that they can't pay for. And it breaks my heart. And they come to school every day and they give it all to our children. And I just want to make sure it's enough and that I know we need to get this passed, but you've got our support. And I mean, there's 25, 50 people that couldn't be here tonight that want to be here and are ready to go out there and get the support. So.
Thank you. Danny and Kevin.
Hi, everyone. First, let me thank you for having this meeting. And I also, having been at many of the board meetings over the finances last year, just really appreciate the tone of this meeting in comparison to what it was a year ago and especially in the spring. So hopefully the community and the parents and the board and the teachers and RVTA can continue to work as humans, and it doesn't get to that contentious point that it really felt last year. So thank you for starting almost 2025 out with this. I'm a parent of 2 children at Hidden Valley. A lot of you I think already know this now. I am a teacher in 2 UHSD. I'm in my 9th year in the district. I was at Redwood. I'm now at Tamscal. I'm also on the budget committee here. So just thinking about the experience we just went through with Measure A, which didn't pass, Measure B, which did, and actually rethinking some things that we've been talking about in our budget committee teams. To point number 1, I know it is not apples to apples, but sat in lots of meetings where it was pointed out over and over again that Measure A, the $500 million bond, did not pass by 2% because of our community. And the idea that Archie was not getting what the other schools were getting, and an absence of understanding that Archie wasn't getting it because Archie didn't need it. There was, and I don't need to go into the details. So I know it's not the same situation at all, but talking about tax per parcel versus tax per square foot, just wanting to make sure it is abundantly clear that it is not then an equity issue and they're paying less and we're paying more and we're not getting the same thing. And just a reminder that that was a big reason that Bond A did not pass, was because of that view in our community. And to that, Tyler and Rachel, if you are going to send out a survey, hearing you talk about it, I honestly think a 1-question survey with an explanation, definition of the difference. If you were voting today, yes, or like, which would you vote yes on, right? Not even would you vote yes or no on a parcel. And I think then that information would be really great, because I don't want it to be like it doesn't pass by 2% because of people being like, well, they're going to pay more. Anyway, I don't need to go on that. And to point number 6, in the budget committee, in my small group,
You have 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds. I think we were like initially, because of the cost of it, like very anti hiring a consultant, but seeing the power of the consultant with Measure B and knowing how important social media was for our federal elections, and where there was a strong, very strong social media presence. We've all read the news that magnets and signs matter, but we have to have a very strong social media campaign, and that cannot be ignored. And I don't know if that can be accomplished without a consultant. Okay. And then I had one more point, but.
You're too much of a rule follower.
Okay. My last point is, again, you've already spoken about it tonight. If you need a plate to pocketbooks, which again we saw with this 2024 election, some would say came down to, but I don't. That's a whole nother issue. We have some of the most prominent real estate agents, children's in our schools. At least I know at Hidden Valley. And how do we partner with them? Again, talking about this media campaign. I mean, Eric Elman has 2 children at Hidden Valley. You cannot go a block in this town without seeing his name. And how does he communicate with his older clients? Like, this matters for your pocketbook. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Cindy Credo.
Cindy Credo, TK teacher at Hidden Valley. I believe educators play a key role in the achievements of creating the highly desired schools in this district. In spite of these efforts, we rank near the lowest paid group of teachers or educators. I recognize the financial position of the district, being on the board, the budget committee, and without the parcel tax, substantial cuts will need to be made. Each teacher in this district has their own special and unique story. I'm here to share just a small portion of my life and why moving forward with the parcel tax is important to me. In May of this year, I actively interviewed for open positions in higher paying school districts and was extended offers. I declined these offers, however, and chose to stay at Hidden Valley. I could not have made it through 2023, the year of my husband's cancer journey, without my Hidden Valley colleagues or families or students. They were there for me and my family in one of our hardest years. And that year reminded us that the mental and physical health of my family is a non-negotiable. In 4 days, I happily celebrate my husband's first anniversary of being cancer-free. His continued health is essential to me. While the treatment portion is complete, the maintenance portion has just begun. We continue to pay for his regular trips to UCSF, his blood work, CT scans, MRIs, and his monthly medical needs. His continued health cannot be something that we as a family cut in our budget. The last wage increase does not cover these costs. Knowing the current state of the district's budget, the only way to change the cycle is to seek a parcel tax to increase the wages of our educators. I'm here to make sure that the district and our schools are better, because we can do better, but not if we continue to spend our time focused on the small increases that perpetuate wages at the lowest end of the scale we're in. My story is a small one in the multitude of our educators. Each of us has our story of how our lives are affected by rising costs. I continue to be at risk of losing my team members, which are my family at Hidden Valley. So I'm here wanting an action plan that will ensure the parcel tax passes. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak? That we move on.
Can I make?
After comment discussion on the go ahead.
The teachers only language versus all the educators. Like, I thought it was good to say, hey, teachers need the money, but everybody does. So whatever the pros think about that language makes the most sense to me, right? That
like what will get a yes vote and what will get it passed.
Yeah.
Is what we're most concerned about.
And then I think you guys were talking about this. How do we know if it's enough? Why not ask for
is 3 million enough? If
and why would the community support 3.5 million? I don't know how you figured that out, but how do you don't go big or go home like with nothing? But like, how do we get to that? And again, maybe that's what the consultants say. So I just want those were really good comments.
I was thinking similarly. It's not a compelling. I think messaging isn't a compelling if we're just gonna squeak into the green, or if we're gonna teeter on the edge of the top of the bottom or something like that. So it's somewhere in between, like being irresponsibly aggressive and being irresponsibly too conservative, that you're not making a compelling argument for like, we don't want to be squeaking. We don't want our teachers to be squeaking better, but still squeaking along. Like, we need to make it bold enough that we are moving solidly into a much better position. And so I think that's both in terms of what we choose for the variables and for the messaging. So finding that sweet spot, I think, is going to be our key. And the other thing that came to mind that I'm thinking of with respect to the parcel versus square footage is the concept of fairness, that this tax is fair. So there could be arguments pro and con for each of them in terms of fair, but I think we need to understand what our definition of fair is, and that's what we're gonna go with. Because I think that's, in thinking about this last election and in general, the idea of fairness, I think, is gonna be key in forward. So those are two things that came to mind.
I want to say that I think the power of the message we have to send is that this is about people.
Mm-hmm.
We are asking for money for our educators. We're not asking for money to put in a new lunchroom, although I'm not negating why Measure B and other measures are very important for facilities. Our kids are going to school, with Archie Williams, 8 at the same chair. But I mean, if we really, the comments have really made me realize these are individuals. These are individual stories. These are our community. These are our educators. These are our people. So the equity and fairness of it, it shouldn't even be a question when you put the human factor in. You know, we're not raising money for things, we're raising money for the livelihoods of our educators, and I think we really have to push that. And I think if there's no compassion in our community to pass that, you know, we're in deep crap, honestly. So I think we've got to come out strong with that message, and we'll work with our consultant, I think, hopefully, to get that across. That's it.
Daniel, any other comments?
No.
But I do like the idea of us coming back for another conversation so that on the 20th, we're not at the end having to stay here till 2 a.m. because we have to make a decision and we've got to let me run out of the room and get my spreadsheet, whatever. We don't want to do it at the last minute.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry.
A special meeting can just be this topic and this topic only, and it can be relatively short because we won't have a bunch of other things.
Thank you so much.
Because I do feel like we need to talk about it more as a group. Okay. And I wanted to say thank you to the people who came to speak. I know it's late on an evening and it's during the middle of the week, so I really appreciate the fact that people are coming here to, give us some input, because it's really appreciated. And with that, I will move on to the next item in our agenda, which is number 3, window into RVSD multilingual learning.
Yeah, I'll introduce this topic and then hand it over. But I have to say that last Thursday may have been the highlight of my career here at RVSD, my very short career here at RVSD. We had probably 150 families, 200 families at Manor Elementary celebrating the power of bilingualism and celebrating a good handful of our students who have reclassified as English proficient, meaning they speak both their home language and English, which as a monolingual speaker myself, I wish I had the power of two languages. So I want to give a lot of credit to Eric Sable and Amelia Alamari. Amelia did a ton of work getting this together, was calling people on the phone and pushing people to get as many people at this event. So without further ado, this is a great presentation about the power of multilingualism and some of the great students we have in our district.
Thank you. Of course, I'm losing my voice as I was coming here tonight, literally. So I'm not sick, I think it's just laryngitis. Hi, I'm Amelia Alamari. I'm the English Language Development Coordinator for the district and intervention teacher at Manor Elementary School, and also working with English learners there.
I'm Eric Sable, Director of Student Services, and it was a ton of fun to collaborate with Amelia on this, though she did the vast majority of the work, and a lot of this information was also shared, at least some of it I believe was shared at the celebration, at least some of the information. So amazing work. And it's a lot of information. It's a community resource now, so we're going to try to run through it, but definitely encourage you all to go back and sink into it some more.
Yeah, and a lot of pictures in here because I'm an ELD teacher for my life. That's my passion, and pictures speak 1,000 words. So we're going to quickly just go over the English language development team here at Ross Valley, specifically looking at who our multilingual learners are and how we're supporting them. Eric will present a bit of data, and then we'll quickly talk about family engagement and share some great photos from last Thursday. So this is our amazing elementary ELD team. I represent Manor. I'm there 5 days a week. Alicia is at Brookside 4 days a week, and Ellie and Angie are at Wade Thomas and Hidden Valley 3 days a week. And of course, Melina, our district coach, who supports all of us and works with us through our MTSS team meetings. And then we have Laura, who is working as the Spanish teacher at the middle school at White Hill, and she's also supporting with LPAC testing and reaching out to families. She's bilingual. And Amber Wild, who supports our newcomers level 1 and 2 students at the middle school, as well through English language development. We created this beautiful map last Thursday
We actually ran out of the little papers that they were filling out. We had so many families, but you can just see the amazing diversity of our multilingual learner families. Just at the top, we have approximately 85 students right now district-wide. That number fluctuates, and I think with the students that Tyler mentioned who were reclassified recently, we're up to like 120. And really diverse range of languages. Many of our families were transitioning from the term English language learner to multilingual learner because many of our families speak more than one language at home. I was speaking to one of my Urdu speaking families, and the mom shared that mom speaks one dialect apart from Urdu, dad speaks another dialect, and they're teaching their kids Arabic. So that's 4 languages and English. So it's pretty amazing. We shared this last Thursday as well, but just really, really firm believers that multilingualism is truly a superpower. We know that it enhances cognitive abilities, that kind of old school ideology that learning more than one language is going to prevent you from learning English. Totally not true. We know it really helps the brain develop in multiple ways. Of course, it promotes cultural awareness. It helps people and students understand people from different walks of life, different perspectives. And it improves communication. You can communicate with double the people when you speak double the languages. Okay, so last year we adopted a new curriculum specific for our English learners, our multilingual learners, called EL Achieve. This program is designed to be used in a pull-out model or a self-contained model. So there's 2 types of English language development. When the classroom teacher is supporting students by providing scaffolds and differentiating the learning and using tools in the classroom. And then a pull-out model, which is called designated English language development, which is what this curriculum is used for. And it's really heavily focusing on oral language development through really interesting age-appropriate curriculum and content. And the intention is to group kids by their proficiency level. So you would have a group of newcomers, you'd have a group of level 3 students, and they'd be working together to build their oral language, really focusing on academic language, and then that would transfer to their academic content areas. Okay, I love all the pictures of my munchkins. So this is our approach district-wide to supporting our multilingual learners. We really, truly have the most amazing team. I feel so fortunate every time that we get together here at the district office. There's one teacher at every single school site who's both the English language development teacher and intervention teacher. And that's really nice because many of us are pulling those students multiple times each day, both in the reading intervention groups and for designated ELD. And it allows us to provide the explicit phonics and the work needed to get them decoding and encoding, and then also building their language skills and their vocabulary. So you're kind of meeting them at both ends of the spectrum so that they can really fully develop and access the curriculum. And just really quickly, another big piece of this is the collaboration with classroom teachers, that we're always meeting with them, understanding what they're teaching in the classrooms, making sure that our work is aligned to what they're teaching. So these are just students at Brookside, Wade Thomas, and Hidden Valley. Again, most of Wade Thomas and Hidden Valley, they're there 3 times a week. So they're meeting with these students for the most part 3 times a week, sometimes more than once a day. And at Manor and Brookside, where we have the majority of our multilingual learners, we're meeting with these students 4 times a week. Okay, Amber Wild, she's phenomenal. She is working with all of the level 1 students. Those are students who we're going to talk a little bit about LPAC, but scored a level 1, beginning to develop on the LPAC, newcomers, and some of the level 2 students, depending on their language proficiency. And that's an alternative to their regular English class. And it's really an opportunity to provide targeted language instruction and also really support them in kind of scaffolding the instruction in their other subjects. So she really works very, very closely with the content area teachers to make sure that she's building background knowledge and providing the vocabulary and the language that they need to be successful. And then we also have a special advisory class where she works with students that were formerly with her, so she can continue having that relationship and making sure she's there as a support, checking in to make sure that they're continuing to grow and thrive in their classrooms. And of course, like I mentioned before, Laura is supporting at the school site as well with parent outreach and LPAC testing. Okay, the data, the fun part. This is going to be very brief because we know Julia did an amazing presentation on a lot of this data at the last meeting. But just in case you're unfamiliar with the process of how an English language learner is identified, and the official term is still English learner according to the CDE. So every single time that a student enrolls in a California school, the parent has to complete something called the home language survey. It's 4 questions, and based on the answers to these questions, they are either eligible to take the LPAC assessment, which is a California state assessment of language, or not. So basically, if any language other than English is spoken at home, there's a chance that this child might need additional support. We give the LPAC assessment initially when they enter the school. And then we get a result. There's 3 levels from that initial LPAC. And based on their score, they either are identified as initially fluent English, proficient, which means they don't receive services, or they receive a level 1, 2, or 3. And based on that level, they receive a varying amount of support. And then those students will continue taking the summative LPAC each spring until they reach a level 4, which is the highest level, well developed. And we'll go through that process a little bit. It's pretty rigorous, the assessment. There are a lot of monolingual students that truthfully wouldn't pass it. So it really is a true achievement to reach that level of proficiency.
So just a couple data representations here quickly. So this is the summative LPAC from spring of 2024. And so, over on the right that is, and then you'll see the strands from previous years. So the purple up top are MLLs who progressed at least 1 level. So that's a solid number. And then the blue band who maintained, then in the sort of the teal, those students who maintain levels 1 through 3, and then down at the bottom, students who decreased the level. So we're seeing the vast majority of students that are maintaining or improving. So that's great, and also understanding too that the cohorts are shifting and changing year over year. So that's just kind of showing a continuum from the past few years. And another way to look at it, also this is spring summative LPAC data. You can see by grade level the amount of children that are at level 1, 2, 3, or 4. And something to note is that for kindergarten through 2nd grade, the summative test is on paper, and then in 3rd grade it changes to a computer model. So there's kind of a qualitative shift in the student testing experience, and something that the team is definitely paying attention to in terms of is that make it more challenging, or are the students able to access that better? But that's a sort of a view of how our kiddos are doing from last spring. Move on.
And those kiddos in the green, those are the level 4s we were talking about that are eligible for reclassification. So many of those students were the students that were standing up and being honored at the event on Thursday. So when we talk about reclassification, we're really talking about changing a student's status from an English learner to English fluent. So they would no longer be receiving or need extra services and support in order to be successful in their content classes. And so that first indicator is the LPAC assessment. They have to score a level 4 unless they have an IEP, in which case there's an alternate program or pathway we can take to reclassify. The next step is getting teacher input and an evaluation, looking at the report card and how they're doing across other subjects. We consult with the parent or guardian, and then we use other measures like CASP testing, DIBELS testing, other standardized testing to compare and make sure they're also performing at high levels across all of that. And just to be clear, the LPAC is assessing 4 language areas of language. The oral language component is listening and speaking, and the written language is reading and writing. And like I mentioned before, the reading and writing component of that is pretty rigorous. It's very similar to the CASP test. Okay, and these are all of our munchkins, or the majority of them, that were reclassified at the celebration on Thursday. It was really exciting. We had 20 students between last spring and this year that were reclassified. You can see from all different language backgrounds, Swedish, Urdu speaking, Arabic speaking, Spanish speaking, Japanese speaking. And they were just beyond proud. The families were really proud. It was pretty amazing to see. So we're very, very excited about that. And our last look is at family engagement. I want to take a quick look at the events that we've had this year and kind of what we're already doing to support our families and what I'm hoping we can keep building on. So this year, you can go to the next slide if you want. Every single school site was asked to have some sort of multilingual learner event. Each site kind of did that in their own way. We had an amazing folklorico dance performance at Manor, and we invited all families. I know Wade Thomas had a breakfast, and Hidden Valley, I think, as well. So I'm interested in seeing how we can further build out those events and make sure we get more families to attend, and then also kind of go beyond the just socializing and really figure out how we can get more parent voices and input into the decision making. This was our district celebration. My amazing MC Jorge in the back, he was incredible. We had such an amazing turnout. I don't even think this picture represents everyone. Some of them may have left by then. And then it's the back of their heads, but I have Florencia and Denise there from the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center. Tyler and I went and visited, and we've rebuilt an amazing relationship with them. They've been at my school site, I think, 6 times since our visit. We're talking on the phone daily. Eric just emailed me about doing a TK presentation there to try to recruit families and bring them back to our district. So that's a very exciting new development. I've got Shelly in the back of your head right there. So thank you so much for coming. That was amazing having you there, interacting with our families and participating. We did this really fun concentric circles, would you rather discussion protocol. It was a gamble, but I think it worked out pretty well. We had families from all different language backgrounds having conversations around whether or not they would prefer to never have to cook dinner again or never do laundry again, giving them language scaffolds and really putting them in the shoes of their students and what it feels like to be in a class where you have students who are, highly English proficient or English only, students from various language backgrounds, and giving them, that sense of discomfort, but also that sense of success with the scaffolds and the language scaffolds and practicing. So they had a lot of fun, and it was very successful, I think. Okay, so what we're currently doing, I think a lot of new and exciting things. Like I mentioned, we're having these very intentional events at the site level and the district level. We're making, I think, a much bigger effort to make sure that all of our communication and our outreach is both in English and Spanish and other languages. When we use Parent Square, that's a really beautiful feature that automatically translates into the designated home language of each family. All of our schools and the district has a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging committee that's looking at ways that we can be more inclusive of all of our families. I worked with Teresa to really think about how we can make equitable and intentional outreach to new families and how we're targeting our new families and where families of multilingual learners might actually be able to see our outreach, going beyond Parent Square, thinking about grocery stores, thinking about public libraries, pediatrician offices, and also just making the flyer a lot more succinct and making sure that the most important and relevant information is there. A lot of families don't know what TK is. That concept doesn't exist outside of California. So making sure that it's not just a lot of information on one page and that it's really easy for them to call and get more information. Teresa worked with Sean to create a new Spanish hotline for registration. So when families call, they hear a Spanish speaking voice and they're able to leave a message in Spanish and have someone respond. So it's a big step. My position in general is new, and it's really exciting to have a district ELD coordinator. And hopefully the bond, thank you for that amazing conversation, passes and we can think about more ways to invest in bringing more staff on our campuses who are bilingual and whose main focus is really including all families and making sure that they have equitable access to education. And like I mentioned before, I'm very excited that we reestablished that partnership with the Children's Center. They are absolutely amazing, the work they do. They service a lot of our multilingual learners, both before they come to Ross Valley schools and in their after-school program and summer programs. They are just amazing human beings. They've been at parent conferences with us. They're just incredible thought partners and a great resource. And next steps, my dreams, hopes and dreams. So we're really looking to, like I said, move those events kind of to the next level. We technically should be having something called a District English Language Advisory Council, which means that, and it can be a subcommittee of an existing group. So I'm hoping that the Superintendent's Council can include the family or families of multilingual learners. We can really make sure that their voices are included in important decisions, both at school sites and at the district level. I want to continue to think about ways that we can reach out to families. I know that Parent Square is amazing because it's easy and it translates, but from what I've seen so far, it hasn't been the most effective tool in actually reaching our most vulnerable, families and the families that we really want to attend these events. Like Tyler mentioned, it really required Jorge and I calling every family, me going out to dismissal every single day, taking their phone out, showing them where the message was, helping them register, calling again. So thinking about how can we make outreach? Is a bilingual community liaison an important member to bring onto the team, possibly to make them that outreach and make sure families feel like they really have a person that they can connect to at each school site. And then hiring and recruitment, I think making sure that we have as many bilingual, bicultural teachers in front of our students as possible, continuing to really think about our enrollment practices and making sure that we're digging deep and figuring out who the students are that are living in our district and making sure they know how amazing our community is and how much we want them here.
So I want to give a huge thanks to Eric and Amelia for this work. It may be obvious for some of us, but this is what diversity, equity, inclusion work looks like in practice. This is what this is. This is not something separate from the diversity or DEIB work that we're doing. This is it. So I just want to make that connection explicit because I don't think everybody sees it that way. And just want to thank both of you for the work you've done because that was a remarkable event that I think everybody left with ear to ear grins with. So thank you. Any questions from the board?
I just wanted to echo that. That was a fantastic event. It was full, it was food, it was fun, the kids were running around, it was total community. I ran into my old neighbor who's now a grandparent, whose daughter was at Manor, who was there, and that was a great it's one of the things that happens in our community where it's, you're in school, whatever, but it's your neighbors and your friends, and so it was fantastic. And the energy level, and I know I really appreciated you taking the risk with having us stand up, and it was a little bit like getting everybody to do it, but the energy level to get us all engaged really made it that kind of, it wasn't a meeting and it wasn't just, you squeeze the presentation stuff in there in between. You had the kids go into the so I just think the orchestration and the bringing together of just all the different ways of experiencing being together in community around this subject just was awesome. So I really appreciate the thoughtfulness to how it was all put together, that event. And I'm sure that reflects the thoughtfulness with which all of the work you're doing is. So I really appreciate it. And I love the fact that we're holding up multilingual learners and superpower, and really it's asset framed, it's everything that like we talk about intellectually up here, and to see it in practice is just fantastic.
Yeah, I've been on the Parent Equity Guardian Task Force for many years. When we first started, we did the listening voices. We actually polled parents in the community and asked them how they felt about being in the district and what was lacking. And many said they didn't feel like they belonged. Something as simple as not having the ability to understand the technology on how to register online or get the yellow school bus, for example. And there was this moment where we were like, how are we going to get to this point? And sitting here and seeing this, because the one thing that a lot of us on the Equity Task Force didn't want to see was this almost parental approach to like, let's help you. as opposed to let's empower all of us, right? And to me, to sit here and to see the inversion of the language that, you know, they're not being aided, they're being empowered, because you really do bring that power to our community in the classroom. And I really thank you both for really doing this work, because it brings to light where we need it to be. And this is a great thing. Thank you so much.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, I was really impressed. I love to see like the really concrete actions that have been taken and that you're doing and that are ongoing, like, you know, the technology nights in different languages. I think that's wonderful, because like how are people going to access these, how their students are doing? They can't understand how to register. So just all those little changes, and they're small changes here and there, but they're adding up over time, and it's great to see, because we do want everyone to feel that they belong here. And so I appreciate all those actions that are being taken, and it's not lip service, and it's not, you know, it's not performative, but it's actually like changes being made. So it's nice to see that. Like the Spanish hotline, I think, is fantastic, because that's a great way to reach out to people. I mean, how else, if you can't communicate, it's a huge barrier, and it's on us, not on them. So I appreciate, you know, taking that effort there.
I think one more shout out to Jorge, who has a lot to do with all of those evenings. He's been at pretty much every tech night there, translating and supporting parents, and then of course was there doing all the interpretation last week. So Jorge, thank you.
Quick small question. Oh yeah. Are our phone trees at sites and district in those languages?
I don't know that we have phone trees.
I was talking with another district, like push 1 to talk to so-and-so, push 3 to get a hold of the superintendent, those kinds of things. Because I was talking to another district that was like, oh, yeah, that would be like, because that's the first thing you hear is you call the district or you call your school and you hear something in English. Or do you hear, if you would like to hear information in Spanish, press 2.
I think this is the first step that we've taken, and I want to appreciate Amelia and Teresa and Sean for their creativity and thinking outside the box. When we're seeing, we want to increase enrollment, we're partnering with the Children's Center more closely, we're putting this hotline together, so I think we're trying to find ways to be a little bit more creative and nimble. And that's one example. So we can consider doing that in other areas as well.
Just get to my word.
Yeah, I think the simplest things like calling the school to tell them that your child is sick that day or that has a doctor's appointment is a major barrier. I have most of my family is texting me as their way to report an absence, which I'm not at every school. So I think really thinking that through and making sure that families really have a very comfortable, easy way to access information and share information is huge.
Yeah. Thank you. Great. Do we have any more questions for our presenters? Thank you both. Thank you.
Get a cough drop. Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then, do we have any public comments? The public is fleeing. Bye, public.
Thanks for staying.
Yes, thank you. And no more public comments? Okay. Do we have any further discussion before?
Thanks, Amelia.
Thanks, guys.
Great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Hot take. So we have no vote on that. So I'm going to move on to our enrollment update, which looks like it is time.
Yeah, great. So I'll make this pretty quick. Quick enrollment update. Teresa, there you go. So this is where we're at currently. We're at 1680, which is kind of flat from where we've been at the beginning of the year. We were at 1683. We've kind of bumped up and down between 1683 and 1680. We do have a year-to-year comparison. This is something the board wanted to see from last time. If you compare the colors, you can see the cohort change. So if you look at the table below, you see the orange, it says 165. And then if you look at the table above, it says 164. So we only lost one kid from the transition from kindergarten to first grade. And then you can see that is mostly the case, pretty stable in a lot of areas. If you do look at the numbers on the far right, the total numbers, Brookside and Hidden Valley have gone down a little bit since last year. Manor has actually gone up, which is great news. Wade Thomas, I think, is pretty stable there, and we've lost some students at sorry, I'm seeing.
We have
Wade Thomas?
Yeah, but now I just can't see anything. Sorry. Yeah, so I think it's gone down at White Hill as well. So overall, we're seeing, some trends. One thing that the board was interested in last time is the transition between 5th grade and 6th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that yellow 5th grade at 168, I believe, and actually went up to 194. And that I think is partly because of students coming in from the charter school. And that means we're not losing a lot of kids in that transition either. So that's pretty good news. And then I'll look at the next one is the, so this is just from the first month. You see that 1683 to 1680, kind of pretty stable there. And then can you pull up the second document? Please, thank you. I want to give a shout out to Brookside. Brookside has the best attendance rate right now at 96.78, which is pretty solid. I think our goal is really closer to 97. That's kind of the pre-pandemic average, 97%. What Chris and I were talking about earlier this week is that we typically see these numbers kind of slowly decrease over the year. We see some attendance issues in the spring, winter due to sickness. So you'll see these numbers kind of go down a little bit. They're not exactly where I'd love them to be, but they're not bad either. So I was talking to our principal over at Brookside, Amanda Wagner, earlier today, and she was kind of talking about a lot of the work that her teachers are doing to make sure attendance stays high. So it's not just Amanda messaging it, it's not just me messaging it, but it's all the way down to the classroom teacher level, really pushing and supporting this. She did say that there's a few parents that are like a little, okay, that's enough of that messaging. And then there's other parents who are like, okay, we're gonna do our best to get there. So you're gonna turn a few people off from time to time about that, but big kudos to Brookside. And overall, our district's doing pretty darn well there.
Any ability to correlate this to what it's doing to our bottom line when we say we need butts and seats? How's it looking?
We would not normally make any adjustments to our budget just yet. It would be done as we get into the second interim, because what ends up happening is the numbers tend to trail off. The other thing to remember is that we now are on a 3-year averaging if we're in decline. And so that plays a part in that. And we're also having that bounce where we're going between community funded and state aid funded. So that's impacting us as well. But as we get into the second interim, it will impact our revenues potentially for the positive.
Good.
If those numbers go up.
Great. Okay. So keeping that message ingrained is helpful. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I have something that I'll send out in the beginning of 2025, just as another reminder that how important this is. And I actually mentioned it in a parent square that'll go out tomorrow morning.
Great.
Somebody say something a little wonky. Have you done run chart factor analysis to look for patterns, like key places and patterns where like sometimes it's just when you look over time and you can see wave patterns, or you can see these patterns, and then you ask like, wait, what's going on here where it's having a particular pattern, so that you can really, it's not just we need more messaging, it's like, oh, this is happening every Thursday, or this is happening on the 3rd Thursday of February every year, because you're looking at patterns either over the whole year or year to year, and then kind of inquiring around what's going on with these patterns. Because sometimes it could be a really simple thing when you see a pattern, as opposed to just more, right? It's just, oh, we need our message at 3 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock, or whatever it is. If you can look at those kind of patterns, I don't know if we have the data to be able to do
patterns
that.
that I know are start start with great attendance and we slowly get worse over the year. That's pretty standard. We've also seen that like the Thursday and Friday before Labor Day is a tougher day. We saw that we had that Thursday off for Jewish holiday. The Friday after that was a tough day for attendance. So we're seeing some patterns there. What I will say is that the independent study is helping. We have families actually using that, which is helping some of these numbers go higher than we would. There's also a challenge for our teachers that we're doing all these packets and it's a lot of extra work. So it's not all clean, but I think I haven't done the analysis that you described, but we have looked at the daily rate and noticed a few patterns here and there.
So I remember one of our discussions, there was this like, well, let's have the pizza parties on Friday, or let's have, instead of Wednesday welcome, we're gonna have Friday welcome, or what, those kind of little tweaky things to make those adjustments to incentivize on campusness at just the right points in time.
Our principals are doing, actually I would consider a pretty darn good job doing exactly that.
Okay.
Noticing a calendar date, trying to do an event on that date. And then you can also see some parents going like, oh, that's an event. Like, oh, my kid really wants to be there. And then other parents are like, oh, it's just an event day. Let's go ski. So you can see it on both sides.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I think the more that we can get out sooner, like to get the pressure on the kids, like, hey, I don't want to miss this day. It's whatever, the Christmas sing-along, I want to be there, right?
Yeah.
And so if we know it's butting up next to a holiday, how do we get that information? Or have like and it takes, like, no, we just know the Friday and Thursday before every whatever holiday, the kids do this. And so it's ingrained into the culture. And then as we look at the calendar for next year, we could be a little bit more critical on like, hey, do we really need that day off on a Thursday? Like, can we push that to a Friday? Like, I wasn't critical in that last year when we were approving the calendar for this year, but I will be more so this year. Like, is that the right thing to do? I don't know.
It was tough, especially if we're trying to match up to the high school calendar, because having one kid who's in a district who has a day off and the other kid who doesn't is not a happy home that day.
Yeah.
There's a lot of gloating from the one who doesn't have to go. I'm just saying, a lot. All right. Well, there's any other
And
questions?
definitely appreciate all the thoughtful intentionality that's already gone into it. So I think this is more just kind of brainstorming and how can we continue to improve, because we just want to make sure that kids are in school and learning.
And we'll bring another update to the board in, I think, February.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And there is no public here to comment, and we didn't have any further discussion here. I just want to say there's like, what was the statistic? If you miss 2 days of school a month from K through 8, you've missed an entire year of education.
Yeah.
It's just that number. It's like, yes, we're losing money, but your child is losing it on their education as the part that keeps sticking in my head when you hear that. Anyways, okay. Moving on, we're actually finally jumping to number 5 that was reorganized. Oh wait, no, not that one.
No,
The new number 5, which is number 2, which is the annual Board of Trustees organizational meeting to elect a board president, clerk, and representative to serve on the Marin County School Boards Association, MCSBA, for the term of December 2024 through December 2025. All right. So, we get to have a fun discussion.
We also have ballots if you want to do it that way, or
Did you
just
say
have
not
a
it?
discussion.
No, I was going to say that. Well, I think it's been working very well personally. I mean, so I'm just gonna say I think the way we have it has been working very well.
So I don't get to say not it. Well, okay, so if I'm not gonna say not it, do I get to say I need somebody else to help with a parcel tax situation that might happen in the near future, so I don't have to be doing that too? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, I definitely want to be involved, but if I'm gonna
yes,
do this another year.
I think creating ad hoc duties for people based on things that need to get done is something that we can definitely, you don't have to carry.
Madam President,
Yeah.
do you want to continue for another year in this role? given your stellar performance this past year.
You buttering me up. That's what
There's
I'm
no
saying.
butter. There's no butter. You know, I everyone's like, not it. But the reality is, it's like you are in this too. 2 kids in school, like all of us have these kids in school. What is it that you would like to happen?
I ran for re-election because I wanted to continue like the positive direction that we've been moving in. With Tyler coming on board, and I see both of you are praying like that I'll say yes. I wouldn't have done that if I didn't care, and I still care. That hasn't changed. So I would serve another year with the understanding that I may not want to do it a 3rd year.
I understand.
But
And
I do want to keep.
I think we should keep you on because I think you have. Tyler needs that continuity. You know, he's a big boy, but you know, I think it would really help with the continuity of how you two, the 3 of us, and it's the clerk being there with the planning of the agenda. It's working well, and just kind of throw things at us to pick up the pieces. Your communication to the community is quite good. It's something to study. Those of us who will be probably in this role in the future, take a look and learn from the expert here. Just make sure we're not going to throw you to the wolves, because I think that you should continue for another year as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Nomination. Is there a nomination? That's
Yeah, I think technically you have to nominate. At least that's how we've done it.
Do we want to start with the role of the president, do you think? I think we should. I would like to formally submit a nomination to have Rachel Whitwick continue as the president of the Ross Valley School District Board for the 2025 school year.
Second.
A 3rd.
All right, so Chris.
Aye.
Shelley, Daniel.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I accept.
Madam President.
Thank you very much. With that, I'm going to nominate Chris to be our clerk. Because our partner, I heard it too. I heard it too. So.
Absolutely.
I mean, Daniel, I think you would make an excellent clerk as well, but I'm thinking that perhaps in the future we might transition some roles around, and that would.
I think that would be a great
If that
learning
feels like the
experience.
right sequencing, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think it would be a good natural progression.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, then I formally nominate Chris Reynolds-Cobb to be our clerk.
To sign away my home every time.
She's gonna have to sign all the paperwork with me.
Do you want a second?
I second it.
All right, so
I third.
first and second, I'm gonna say aye, and Daniel.
Aye.
Shelley.
Aye.
And Chris, do you accept?
I graciously accept this nomination to continue as the clerk of the Ross Valley School District Board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, yay!
Congrats.
All right, and our last one is the Marin County School Boards Association representative.
And I believe,
That is Daniel.
Daniel, that is you. It has been you if you are.
Yeah.
You're up for doing that another term?
Yeah.
Then I would nominate Daniel as a Marin County School Boards Association representative for the 25, 20,
The rest of
whatever, the next,
25, yeah, for the next year.
Another term.
Perfect. I will second that. So Shelley?
Aye.
Rachel, aye. Chris?
Aye.
Daniel?
Do you accept?
Accept.
Lovely.
Okay.
Okay, so there you go. You've got your
Status quo.
Yep. And let's see.
Last year we did do an MCSBA alternate.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you want to do that again.
I would like to nominate Shelley Hamilton
Oh.
as the alternate for the NCSBA. I am willing to give a speech about that.
Please do. No,
But
it's
given
okay.
the time and the ability to insinuate that you are the perfect candidate for this, I will just nominate you.
Sure.
You're up for it?
Yeah.
All right, I'll second you then. All right, Chris.
Aye.
Rachel, aye. Daniel.
Aye.
And Shelley.
I accept.
Aye.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Teresa. All right, so Shelley is our alternate. All right, so number 6. We have to approve the contract with Team Civics to provide consulting services and informational flyer for a parcel tax measure. And this is
me. So we kind of talked about this in the earlier presentation, and I just wanted to, in creating the agenda, we were thinking about putting this on the consent agenda, but we wanted to be transparent with the community that we're actually having an honest discussion about whether we should or shouldn't use a contractor to help us with the informational campaign, which would essentially be from once you approve this through mid-February. And then it would transition to the community to start working either with a contractor or on their own. Districts do it both ways. So this would really be for the next 6 weeks. Charles Heath would be the person we would be working directly with, and he knows Marin really well. He's helped a number of districts in the area with both a bond and parcel taxes, so he kind of knows our constituents pretty well. Being a new superintendent with limited experience, this would be helpful for me for sure. And we got the price down. It was, I think, close to $6,500 a month, and we got it down to, I think, $9,500 for the 2 months total. So Charles Heath and the team at Civics was willing to work with us. Questions about this?
And then to Danny's point around social media, are they doing anything around that, or that's?
They'll help us with talking points, flyers, mailers, all the informational campaign that we go through, help us with the website that we get put up. So all of that.
Will they though create, like on Instagram, you need a 300 by 300 pixel, blah, blah, blah. It's different than what you would do for a flyer. Will they create the assets that you would use?
So they're, as a district, we can pay for them to do an informational campaign
Yes.
for us. So we can get the information out. We can't do anything that's like a measure.
No.
So
I'm just
so-
thinking of the assets for an informational campaign beyond print things, because there's a element of rescaling, resizing, shorter words for social media than for print. Is that included in there?
When I've worked, it wasn't Team Civics, it was another group that Charles worked with, but we were given assets to work with for social media, but I was on the other end, like it was after it had been handed off to a campaign committee, and it wasn't with the district, so I'm not sure which assets they were given before that.
Okay.
And so we would reach out to people in the community that are experts in this as well to maybe be on that committee to then work with. Okay, great.
Yeah, so then in February, it would transition to a parent-led, community-led effort, and that's where it would be a, yes on C or whatever the thing is. And Rachel, I had some really good discussions with 2 parents down in Ross this morning, and they were talking about how they actually leveraged the community. They had some graphic designers that sent their kids to the schools, and they actually just created their own assets. So this is really just for our support at the district through February, and then the actual campaign can decide whether to continue with Charles and Team Civics or to kind of do it on their own.
So this is more, the messaging and the materials is more about the district, about our teachers and educators, about our budget, not about the specifics of the parcel.
Exactly, because we can't advertise for, we can't do that. We can't
And
do the
which we
political
won't
stuff.
have the decision made until formally
That's
January.
right, exactly.
That was my
Yeah.
next question, was timing, because I was like, wait, why is he gonna be on in January if we're not making our decision until end of January? But now that makes sense to me that it's a different, which I think is totally important messaging, but it's a helpful clarification for that.
Did you work with them at San Rafael?
I have not worked with them. I didn't really work on the bonds that Santa Fe did. Our business office did that completely. I did some phone banking, but I didn't work directly with them. But they did use consultants for sure.
Okay.
I don't have any questions, and I know that you all have been doing so much due diligence that I really appreciate in terms of, like you said, talking to other districts, talking to other people, looking at options and alternatives. So I appreciate that you're bringing this forward to us, having done a lot of that legwork and due diligence. So
yeah. Well, for me, it was one of those things where like I worked on these campaigns and I've done the social media for multiple campaigns, like 4 of them now. But the thing was, is like I think that for this and the fact that we didn't have enough information out when we did the polling, like we need to make sure that the community understands where we're sitting at.
Right.
And I think that they might be able to help us get a broader reach and do it in a more effective manner than we would be able to do it if we did it on our own. That and there's big stakes. Like we have teachers here that I want us to get paid and I want this to pass. So it's like we need to not, I'd rather spend some money up front and make sure that it, you know, this effort isn't wasted.
Yes. And just for context, this is basically $9,000 of support plus a little over $9,000 for mailers, which we'd have to do anyways. And if we get the win on it, it's a $30 million win potentially. So 9,000 for 30 million is
Sounds like a great trade.
Sounds like a good return.
Yeah. Okay. So
there's any more questions, or we could go out for the non-public comment? All right, so I'll bring it back to us to discuss them.
No, I was going to ask you a question.
Oh, okay, go ahead, ask a question.
So I don't really know this world, and so when you look at Team CivX, it seems to be very, very much tied into Marin County, which is one of the things that I said was really important in understanding the nuances of each town. I was just looking at the work that they've done. They've done a lot of stuff in San Anselmo there. It looks like it's all San Rafael, Miller Creek, and it's they're interesting animals. San Anselmo, Fairfax, just.
Because they were working with TAM Union, they were all over Fairfax and San Anselmo as well.
Great.
So they are familiar with our district, and that was 2 campaigns that they worked on with them. So they are familiar.
Through TAM, okay.
Yeah, through TAM.
Yeah, they've got.
I mean, it
makes sense.
They knew people in our community by name and familiar with things that we needed to be paying attention to. So enough to impress me that I was like, okay, so they know San Anselmo and Fairfax.
I trust you.
Okay. Thanks. So,
what do you need from us?
Looks like we need to vote to approve the contract with Team CivX to provide consulting services and an informational flyer for a parcel tax measure.
Okay. So, do you want to ask for a motion?
Yes, since we have no public for comment and we have no further discussion, I will entertain a motion.
Okay, I will put forth a motion to approve the contract with Team CivX to provide consulting services and informational flyer for a parcel tax measure.
Great. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Great. Chris?
Aye.
Daniel?
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
And Rachel? Aye. All right, so we have approved that contract. Thank you for bringing that forward. The next item is recommended approval of the 2024-25 first interim budget reports.
For the opportunity to speak this evening. Is this on? Should be down. Oh, there we go. Okay. So thank you for the opportunity to discuss the first interim this evening. This is just kind of an outline of what we'll be talking about this evening. And so, did I just go too far? Okay, so in terms of our demographics are the things that really drive our revenues. And so that's looking at our students. And so when looking at this is our enrollment and our P2 attendance. And the one thing I want to point out is you'll see numbers that are different than what Tyler was sharing earlier this evening in terms of our enrollment. And there's a reason for that. When looking at the enrollment in the school business world, we talk about the CBEDS date, and the CBEDS is a certain date that we look at our enrollment and our staffing every year, and that date is the first Wednesday in October every year. So on that particular date, we had an enrollment of 1693. And then the other thing that we look at is what is our P2 attendance, and the reason for that is P2 attendance, which is our annual attendance as of the end of March each year. That's what we generally get paid upon if you are an LCFF district. And so our numbers here are estimates based upon what we think our attendance will be in the current year. And so you'll note that we're showing our attendance rates in the 94.2 to 94.3% range. And that's important when talking about our total revenues, our LCFF revenues, for the years that we are in LCFF as opposed to community funded. And one of the things that's really important is that we get those attendance rates up. We did have a historical rate that was in the 96.2% range in prior to COVID. And so what you saw was the state holding us constant for several years. And then in 22-23, that was the first year that we actually went back to the true attendance rate, and we had an attendance rate of 93.1%. So our rates have gone up, but again, you do see an overall decrease in our enrollment. The other thing that's important to note is our funded average daily attendance versus our P2 ADA. This is really critical when looking at kind of what's happened to us over the last several years as well. What you'll notice is that there is some large discrepancies between our funded average daily attendance and our P2 ADA. And the reason for that is districts have traditionally had been funded based upon the higher of your current year average daily attendance or your prior year average daily attendance. And so during COVID, because of all of the drops in enrollment and attendance that districts saw, they went back and they said, okay, the state, we're not going to hold harmless for just the 1 year. We're going to do a 3-year average as well. So now we still have those other factors, but we also now have a 3-year average that's in consideration. And so that's why you see the large differences between funded daily attendance and our P2 average daily attendance. But the one thing that is really critical, you'll see a linear kind of an average, you see it going down. And so this is really critical because this impacts directly our revenues as we are in LCFF funded status, and we're bouncing as well between the community funded and average daily attendance. So
if we're projecting that it's going to be the same 94.3% attendance, how come the drop off is bigger this year, next year, and the 26-27?
It has to do with your enrollment. We are seeing larger drops in our enrollment. So if I go back a slide, you'll see some pretty steep drops.
We're starting with 683, 637, okay.
Yeah, so that's what drives that. If we get those attendance rates up, we might still only have an enrollment of 1683 next year, but our average daily attendance would be higher than that 1587.
But we know our enrollment this year is 1680.
1693.
But
in 24-25, it's 1693. Again, this is our CBEDS date, so our date in the first Wednesday in October.
This is where it gets really, Chris and I talked about this before this meeting, was because I was basically giving you the real numbers as of like yesterday, and Chris is giving you a snapshot in time one day
October 15th,
back in October. So that's where I think if you're a community member listening in, you can start getting really confused about why is Chris using a different number than the number Tyler was talking about.
And so our budgets are always built on snapshot data. When we're talking our attendance percentages, it's a snapshot of our CBEDS date, which is that date in October, as well as attendance as of our P2 attendance, which is as of the end of March. So it will fluctuate and be different than what Tyler was discussing and does discuss every month as he provides that data. So again, you see the downward trend in both enrollment and average daily attendance.
And Chris, where are you getting these projections for the out years?
So these projections for the out years, they're based upon demographic studies that we've done. So we use the data that's there in present to kind of show what our declines are. The other thing that we do is we look at what is called cohort data. And so what we do is we move our students forward a year each year and then drop off a grade. And just on the natural, you're also seeing declines. So it's a combination of those two things. And we actually saw an increase in our enrollment. If you go back to here, you see an increase in our enrollment between 22-23 and 23-24. We went from 17-24 to 17-39. And so we were a little more aggressive because we weren't ever projecting enrollment increases within our demographic studies and cohorts. So we were a little more aggressive in our budget in the current year, and our enrollment actually came in quite a bit less than what we had projected as well at budget adoption.
And earlier this year, you may have remembered approving a new demographic study. Chris is working with that team to kickstart that so we can continue to use the most relevant demographic data to make these out-year projections.
Yeah. Are we fully TK'd, meaning I know there was increasing the ages? Are we now up?
We go up again next year.
We do go up again. We go
Except
up
the
next year.
last
Or down.
We'll be fully implemented next year.
Full implementation is the 25-26.
25-26.
Okay.
So within our cohorts, we're having to increase our TK enrollment slightly each year until 25-26, and then it's just.
Wow, that's the number.
So in terms of our revenues and expenses, I like to show the percentages just because it helps to kind of put things in perspective. And I want to point to two different numbers. One is the local control funding formula, which is 19.275 million. That's just under 65%. It's 64.4%. Then the other is the parcel tax. In the current year, we're estimating to receive $4.7 million to the generosity of the taxpayers of our community. And that's 15.8% of our total district budget. When looking at that, you combine those and you're looking at over 80% of our total revenues. So those are the two largest sources of revenues that we have. And so it's also important to note that our local control funding formula dollars are going to be dropping next year as we look at our multi-year projections. And we'll talk about that in just a few minutes as well. Due to flipping in and out of community funded status. Did it go? There we go. Okay. So when looking at our expenses, we are a service-oriented business in essence, and we are here to serve the community and teach the children. And as such, you would expect our single largest source of expenses to be people. And that's what you see within our general fund. 74.3% of our total general fund is salaries and benefits. And then we have other various sources of expenses, as you can see here.
Is maintenance in the properties that we have up there?
Maintenance gets included, a large portion of it under the services and other, because it's considered repairs and maintenance. So that's one of the things that gets into that category. But then you also have books and supplies that some of the things that they purchase go into that category as well.
And have we've pulled in the sale of the center to help us offset some of the revenue, right? Does that count in the revenue for that?
Could you repeat? I'm sorry, Chris.
The sale of
Deer Park.
The sale of Deer Park is in a different fund altogether. So this is the general fund. So any expenses that would come out of that would not be included in this as well. It would be in a separate fund altogether.
That's right.
In terms of our fund balance, I know that's one of the things that we talk about a lot. This is a slide that Tyler showed earlier. This is our total general fund. So it's both restricted and unrestricted. And here's where you can really see the drop in our LCFF revenues. In 24-25, we expect to have 19,275,000. If you look at 23-24, we actually had more dollars. Even though we went into community funded status, we have less dollars in the current year than we did last year. And the reason for that is those 3-year averaging, we're starting to lose some of those years that we had those large discrepancies between funded average daily attendance and our P2 attendance. You see that we're losing the hold harmless that the state has given us for COVID. And so that's the start of that. Then in 25-26, we actually drop even more, $18.9 million in essence. And part of that is we flip back into state aid in 25-26. And then in 26-27, we're anticipating flipping back out of state aid and back into community funded status. So we're doing that dance going up and down. And so it just becomes rather difficult from a budget standpoint.
And if you look from 22, 23, all the way to 26, 27, that's a difference in total revenue of less than $1 million in 5 years. And you can imagine how inflation is impacting our own personal budgets, you know, as we're giving raises and increases in contracts. You know, that is that amount of revenue change really is not keeping pace with the costs that we have at the district.
So the other,
remind me what the significant decrease in state revenues was driving that.
so what happened under federal and state revenues, we had a lot of COVID funds that were coming in.
Okay.
So that's partly what's driving those to drop.
Okay.
And then when you look at the local revenues, your largest sources of local revenues are going to be your parcel tax, the Yes Foundation, and then we also receive some of our special ed funds under local revenues actually. So as flow through dollars through the county.
With respect to inflation, what are the conversations happening right now about the state's cost of living increases, COLA?
We'll have the final numbers. We actually have the governor's January budget proposal comes out in the middle of January. And then we have a school services conference the day after Martin Luther King. So we'll know what those final numbers are. They're not final at this particular point, but they're not good. So those cost of living adjustments.
Not keeping up with cost of living, basically.
The COLAs that are coming in, they're actually, what they're saying is that our projections that we have based upon numbers that we get through the common message that comes, basically all of the county offices of education come together and come up with estimates based upon the Department of Finance numbers, and those are the numbers that districts around the state use. Those common messages are probably higher than what our COLA is going to be in January. So we'll be dropping that. You could see slightly lower LCFF revenues in 25-26 if that happens.
How many students are we talking in that flip? Like if we had 5 more students, we would stay in state aid funded, or is it 80 students? Like what's the order of magnitude on the number of students funded on a per student basis that is causing this flip, more or less? Not, you have to be precise. I'm just looking at orders of magnitude.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Chris, we're about $500,000 into community funded this year. So that would be about 50 students.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's just what I was
So I mean, it's very close.
50 out of 1,700.
And just based upon our property tax values that we're estimating, the increases in property taxes versus the cost of living adjustments in the LCFF, I could see us staying permanently in community funded maybe by 2030, 2031. So we're kind of in that range.
In property taxes and turnover of people selling houses and those kinds of things.
Exactly, but obviously there's a lot of factors that go into that, but we're getting into that that period where we need to be thinking about that, where we would permanently stay in. So, and I think I had mentioned that to Tyler not too long ago as well. So again, this is where we're at. Oh. That was our total general fund. When we talk about what is our reserve percentage, the reserve percentage really is a measure of our unrestricted ending fund balance. So I wanted to break apart the ending balances that were on the previous page and just give you what those look like. And I know Tyler mentioned earlier that the three numbers to the left in terms of reserve percentages, 26.6, 25.7, and 23.1, those are our actual reserve percentages. Anything after that are estimates at this particular point. We expect them to be potentially higher than that when we close, but and if the cost of living adjustment on the LCFF revenues changes for 25-26, our revenues might drop and we could go the other way a little bit too. So there's lots of variables that happen. But the one thing that is certain is our ending fund balance is dropping.
And I think if I was looking at the 25-26 number at 8.7%, and we had been between 8 and 10% for the last few years, I wouldn't be that worried because we're kind of flat. But when you see the number going from 26 down to 5, that I'm worried about. So, I think Chris and I have these conversations all the time about what number you're comfortable with, what makes you, stay up at night. And to me, I'm a little less worried about the number as the rate of decline. The rate of decline scares me. I'm fine if it was 8 and stable, but it's not that. So I think that's the piece that keeps me up at night.
And unfortunately, the state, when they did that 3-year averaging, that actually hurt a lot of districts, because what that did is it artificially held our numbers higher. It made you appear that you had a lot more dollars for a long time than you really did. And so that became one of those pressure points for districts up and down the state. And what you see is a lot of districts, including in the Bay Area right now, going through similar issues. So.
But we're out of the artificially inflated tail of the 3 years.
We are now.
Back into the actual. Yeah. It's still great that it's averaged, which I think is an improvement over a single year. But
we still have the 3-year averaging, but we just don't have the COVID artificial hold harmless in those numbers. So that's really what was driving it.
So this is kind of that fiscal cliff we've been hearing about
Yes.
for the last 4 years. And it's why I'm hearing about other school districts closing schools and combining them. Okay.
Absolutely.
So there was always that fiscal cliff, but what happened is the state changed how we calculate our revenues, and they moved that cliff out. And so it's still there for districts that were in steep decline. So this is something that does keep me up at night as well. And so kind of going back to our process, I know I was mentioning that the governor's going to be providing the January proposal. And so that will impact our second interim budget and will inform our estimated actuals, which is what's a little difficult to understand here is at the estimated actuals, we're actually doing estimated actuals and adopted budget. It's actually 2 budget years that we're looking at that particular point, but just you'll see that all of the data that we get in January will start to inform those. And then in May, we'll have the May revision, which will be more or less something that's close to what ends up being approved at the state level. But then you have by June 30th, the state will approve and adopt their budget. So all of those impact our budgets as we move forward. And we have all of our budgets as we shown here. And so with that, do we have any questions?
Pretty much answered them along the way. Appreciate that.
when do we start folding in budget assumptions or alternate scenario assumptions with partial tax, without partial tax? I imagine it's part of the communication stuff at some point, but you probably don't build it in until it's passed.
I would not build it in until it's passed. That's correct.
So we have an idea of what we would cut based on the task force. So if it doesn't pass, there's some things already that we're looking at.
Yeah, and so I think what we'll be doing is we'll be bringing back at our January board meeting, a list of the Budget Advisory Committee cuts that they were talking about, just to inform the board. Those would be something that would impact the budget, not for 25, 26, but for 26, 27. And to answer your question directly, I wouldn't build it into the budget until I know it passed. And so if we were to move forward, I don't want to assume that we're going to, but if we were to move forward in for the May election, then we would have an idea if it passed, and we could potentially add that to our adopted budget for the following year.
Which was getting at my sequencing question too, about like, if we don't know about the partial tax before we have to have an adopted budget, do we have to make budget cuts before we know whether we're gonna, but if it's all happening around May, back to tight time frame getting it on, then we can make the decisions together, informed is what I'm hearing. So that's helpful. Thank you.
I think the Budget Advisory Committee, the plan was to bring it to the board so we'd see the idea and give authorization for when they needed to make cuts. That was the prioritized list with the amounts and how much they were, cutting. But it wouldn't be because some of
have to.
Exactly. Well, and part of it was some of them require like a March 15th deadline for a release, and so we would be hitting that in a few months. And if we, don't have timeline for that, which is why it would be an extra school year later. So.
And we're planning to bring that list to you on January 29th.
Big meeting. Okay. Thank you.
All right. So we have no questions. Is that we're all done here? All right. And no public for comment. Do we have any further discussion up here at the board? No? Okay. So we do need to approve the first interim budget report here.
So I recommend that we approve first interim budget report.
Second.
Motion and a second. Daniel.
Aye.
Shelley.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Rachel. Aye. Okay. And moving on, we have item 8, which is present for public review or notice resolution number 072425 and the annual accounting of the 2023-24 developer fees in Fund 25. Government Code Section 66001D and 66006B. So this is Chris.
This is me again. So this is just an information item this evening. We'll bring it back to the January board meeting for approval. And what this does is it just provides information to the ratepayers. Anytime you pull a permit to do any type of construction that you're adding to your property or building a home, building a new business, you have to pay a developer fee to the school district to help offset the cost of any additional children that might happen as a result of that property that might come into the school district and create additional need for space. And so what is required is that kind of going back to that, if you build a new home, you might have children that move into the home as well. And so those children might create the need for additional classrooms. And so this developer fee offsets the cost of that to be able to then build those classrooms. And so this is a requirement to just bring it to the governing board by the end of December each calendar year. And so this is just our dollars that were received and expended out of that fund at the end of last year.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Do we have any questions for him? All right, we have no public for comment. All right, any further discussion? All right, thank you, Chris.
Right, and moving on with our agenda, we have consent actions.
Do we
Unless,
have to?
do we not? Do we have to vote? There's no vote on
this?
that one.
Okay, all right.
There's no V.
Yeah.
So consent actions. Unless anybody wants to pull anything out, I will entertain a motion for
To approve all six?
Yeah.
I'll second.
Wait, I was just saying I will entertain it.
I thought you said you.
No, sorry.
Final
Got it.
motion, excuse me.
No.
Do you want to make the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve all 6.
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Daniel.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Shelley.
Aye.
Rachel. Aye. Right. Thank you. And bringing that on, next one is board business. So I have committee updates and reports from announcements and trustees.
Well, I intended to, you had a whole presentation on one of the events that I attended, which was awesome. And then I also went to the superintendent's council and the roundtable. And both of those, I think, have been going really well. I've appreciated the small group discussion format, super engaged, tons of people, people are definitely showing up, and Tyler, as you said before, like very engaged community. And the new faces, as in, there's new PTA presidents and new site councils, but they're showing up. Some great folks who have really good questions and lots of experience with finances, and so it seems like a high level of informed questions, at least in the last one.
I don't have any, interest of time. I don't have much.
Concert tonight at White Hill was quite wonderful. Can't say anything better, more. Heart was full, great attendance, wonderful sounds.
So I didn't get to go to that.
How's the winter market?
Oh, so yeah, the winter market. Daniel and I both went to the winter market, and he wrangled 4 of our mascots.
Great thing is 5th graders now fit into costumes, so we're good for another couple of years.
Oh my gosh, they were so adorable because they're all about the same height. So it was really cute.
How was your art project?
It was fun. There was some refreshers required for some of the adults because they were like, I know what they're supposed to look like. So it was fun. And then we just talked to a ton of people who came by. It was great. And it was beautiful. Like, it was really well done. I'm glad that, me and Kim reached out to us and we were able to get something put together. I would like to do something more next year now that I know what to expect and like how fun it was. I went to the Wade Thomas Harvest Mingle, which was great. I'd never been to one of those, and I've been hearing about them, so that was a lot of fun. I went to the Dr. Lori Watson presentation at Hidden Valley.
I went to that
It was really powerful hearing her speak. I'm definitely going to the one in January. I went to the Yes Board meeting, and they welcomed their new executive director, which is Lisa Bencourt. So she will be taking the reins now and kind of leading Yes, which is fantastic.
She's a Manor parent, correct?
She is a Manor parent.
Is she charter?
Yeah, so she's on board now, which is wonderful. I know that their steering committee, their executive board is very happy that she's on staff now, so that's been great. I know the Yes Theaters have been rolling out stuff. They did their White Hill play, and then like Manor and Wade Thomas are rolling right now. And I think Hidden Valley just opened up their registration. And Brookside, they're all kind of working on their things for the spring for their stuff going on there. And then I guess this month has all been the sing-alongs and the other things that they wanted me to mention. Let's see, other than that, I think that was the main stuff. Oh, I went to my first superintendent's council on accident. I went to pick up some costumes and like drop off stuff, but Danny was sick that day, so I ended up showing up and hanging out because I was like, that's interesting. So that was wonderful. It was really productive for me just to see what goes on at that meeting since I'd never been there in my 4 years here. So that was all. Move on to the next item, which is the approval of regular meeting minutes for October 9th, 2024. And
No Chris, no Ryan at that meeting.
Oh, so 3 of us can vote. Yeah, we have a quorum to vote on this one. There's 3 of us here.
Yeah, 3 of us.
Yeah, because Chris was not here. But yeah. I will make a motion that we approve the regular meeting minutes for October 9th, 2024.
Second?
All right, so Rachel, I, Shelley,
Aye.
Daniel,
Aye.
Chris,
Abstain.
and approval of regular meeting minutes for November 13th, 2024. Shelley, you were not here for that.
I was not here.
So I will make a motion that we approve the regular meeting minutes for November 13th, 2024.
I'll second it.
Great. Rachel, I, Daniel,
Aye.
Shelley,
Abstain.
and Chris.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. And superintendent cabinet report updates.
Yeah, so I've been doing a ton of stuff since the last month that we met. Parcel tax conversations with Ross Lurks, Corte Madera, and Tam. Rachel, I really appreciate you meeting with those folks to learn from them. Our ELL celebration last week was a huge success. Really excited there. The Parent Guardian Equity Task Force and Dr. Watson, two of our great equity events. Let's see, Fairfax Winter Market, which was a lot of fun. CSEA negotiations. I also went to a White Hill Share Case, which is where teachers talk about their professional learning and collaboration. Some of their focal students, which is also more of our equity work that we're doing. That was a big highlight for me as well. And then Eric and I met with someone last week to talk about a potential review of our special education programs. Excited to bring that to the board at some point as well. Julie?
I think the only thing I would add is we had a ELA adoption committee release day last week, and spent most of the day. Melina led us through a evaluation of the program that the teachers have been piloting for, I don't know, maybe 9 weeks now, Benchmark Advanced, and it was a fantastic process, really, really good conversation. Just really clear that the teachers are learning a lot about what they want and what they don't want by working with this program, and we are going to be moving forward with the spring pilot of EL education, which I'm really excited about, largely because a lot of what you're looking for in an ELA program right now has to do with this knowledge strand of the big shift from balanced literacy to kind of a more structured literacy program is anchoring the instruction in content and knowledge. So you're not teaching skills and then layering on top of that. It's kind of the reverse. You're anchored in content, and the content and topics that are offered by EL education are fantastic. There's a 5th grade unit on the 19th Amendment, or kindergarten starts the year investigating toys. So they're really student appropriate. They have a very, very strong equity lens, which of course we're really happy about as well. So, and then the other part of it that's really exciting is we're going to be piloting in partnership with Corte Madera, which I think will be really interesting. So, all good stuff.
Eric?
November 19th, we had our first wellness committee meeting of the year, and it was really great for White Hill students. Our student wellness ambassadors were in the house, and they, along with the counseling staff at White Hill, did a presentation on wellness practices at White Hill. So it was really exciting to have a board committee with student representation, and it was really cool for them to be in a space where there's like this official committee, and we're like and they're able to share their work. They've been at county trainings for training up these youth ambassadors on how to go out and be educators to other young kids, and also they're kind of learning from the high school kids. Redwood High School kids and Archie kids have gone to White Hill to do different health related presentations, and so that was really cool. Our next one's going to be in February, and so that'll be really good.
Nothing significant.
All right, thank you. And with that, future board topics and board direction. Do you have any feedback here?
I want to talk a little bit about just wellness and safety on things around campus. Talked to Tyler earlier in the week around just parent education around internet safety, drugs and alcohol, dating, just kind of almost like a series for parents and students. There was a recent incident where a student was being groomed on social media. And it's like, yeah, kids, you can't go outside. It's dangerous outside, but here's unmitigated access to the internet at 2nd grade, whatever, 4th grade. I just had another conversation with parents today at Brookside. And so I just think we need to do more about educating parents. And I don't know what our role is. It's like smoking in the 60s. Was it the school's role to say, no, we think smoking's bad. We don't know yet. The research, no, we know social media is really bad. Like, we know that. But yet we're still, hey, kids, here's a phone. Keep yourself busy. So I don't know. I just think that we have to do some. I don't know I want to do something about that. So future topic.
There are parent run Zoom calls that we often participate in. Most recent was understanding the teen brain, for example. And they had a topic along those lines, and perhaps we can leverage off of those to put in our newsletters instead of us probably.
And Jim, so I'm in contact with the Department of Homeland Security guy out of San Francisco, who my cousin works with. He put me in touch with him for resources and support for families. And so there's something there that we should do at a larger level than a parent Zoom call. Hey, I'm really, like, because it's, again, parents mean well.
Yeah.
But the social media is not good.
No, it's not.
And people are now slowly starting to come around to that, but still they don't know what to do about it.
I mean, I think the idea for future topics of parent education, parent awareness, the role of the school district, the role of PTAs, how that, like who plays which roles in bringing people together around those kinds of.
And it could be a series of things, how dating has changed in the past 15 years, right? How intimate relationships are changing, even at Whitehill, right? 6th, 7th, 8th grade, right? Stuff starts getting serious. And, I remember what we did in middle school, but it's a lot different now. So how do we just educate parents, just to.
You got enough direction?
I do.
Okay, I think you did.
Thank you.
I also didn't know if we, do we have to, if we decide we want to form a subcommittee, say to help with the parcel tax, do we need to have a meeting and vote on that? Or I didn't know if you could maybe look into how that gets established? Because
It's like ad hoc.
is it, yeah, do we just?
I mean, standing committees are different from just ad hoc things.
Okay,
So,
so if it's
but
ad hoc, do we
looking
just
into
decide?
how we do it,
Yeah, because I would like to figure out how we can hey, yes, we'll all be involved, but also who are the people who are the key ones to go to on the board if we're doing that?
Okay. Kind of like we did with the search.
Yeah, do we?
Oh, we
kind of decided that in the meeting. Do we vote on that? Okay, we should look at that up. Okay. Yes. So,
I'll look at that.
okay, thanks.
Yeah.
it's a lighter lift than the other.
Yep.
All right, and with that, meeting debrief. Any comments on this meeting? Other than the length, which I don't think we really could have done anything about. I feel like we needed to talk about all this stuff.
It's before 10.
It is before 10. All right, with that, I'm not going to make a motion to continue past 10:30. And I will adjourn our meeting at 9:56.